my postman outfit.
Oh, well, yeah.
And that's on his day off.
Yeah, that was my day off, yeah.
Oh, yes. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're all talking about there's a BMM that's gone up in flames where we some of us live, and so we're all talking about that.
No, we were talking about Medivac wearing his postman outfit on his day off.
We were.
Yeah, just true.
Oh. Well, no, that's so you could just spring into action, Medivac, wasn't it?
That's right. I like to whip out my packages wherever I can.
Get there straight away. Do you have one of those? You know, when you're delivering, do you have one of those old people's pushy things that has a handbrake on?
I do sometimes have a trolley, sometimes, but other times I have a van.
And do
so
you know when you start becoming a postie? Do you have to walk? And then next stage up you get a pushy thing, and then next stage up you get a bike, and then you get the van.
No, bike's been outlawed now. Bike's health and safety contravention. You don't have bikes anymore in Royal Mail. They're stripping the thing away. It's just walking or driving.
Walking or driving. Cool.
Yes, it's the way forward.
Yeah, and post people always have shorts on right the way through winter. I find
shirt all year long.
Yeah, no matter what you are wearing, and you have that silly tan line just at your knees.
Yeah, it's embarrassing when you go swimming, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm like a packet of refreshers.
Yeah, but everyone can notice you and go, "Oh, hello, postie."
White feet, brown legs, little bit white.
Bird head, yeah. Excellent. So, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode or session of Mythras, which is a fantasy role-playing game based on a percentile dice. It's very skill-based. It's very hit location-based. It's not leveled at all, but characters can get better and better and better and can interact. We don't have clerics, we have thesists. We don't have magic users, we have sorcerers. And then we have Hazra, who's was a member of Steps, which and Hengist, who are both sort of like melee-based characters, and then Gulliver and Bartleby are the magic-based characters. And we left them in a very interesting situation at the end of the last adventure, which I'm very keen to get back into to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, etc. But before I give a brief synopsis of the story so far, I'll let the players introduce who they are and who they will be playing in tonight's session. And I'm not going to say who goes first because I always get told off for it because I mentioned somebody's name. So,
hi guys, I'm Chubby, and I play Gulliver, the apprentice sorcerer. He is a member of the Order of the Kraken, which is one of the 4 sorcery orders on Odes. The Order of the Kraken specialises in spells involving communication, teleportation, and transportation. And as a sorcerer, Gulliver has the ability to shape his spells, so he can shape them to his needs. He can change the range, the magnitude, number of targets, and even combine several different spells into a single cast. Although he hasn't done that yet.
I was going to say, I don't think you've done that.
Because he doesn't really have the repertoire to do that, but hopefully soon. And anyway, I shall pass on to Mr. Pickles, and I'm going to have to go AFK for 2 ticks.
All right.
I'm Mr. Pickles. I am our team's theist. I serve the goddess of the light moon. Mostly, she gives me cryptic messages, strange visions of my own death, and helps me in lighting candles, healing people, throwing poison and disease out of bodies, and aiding the 2 powerful lump hefters in our group. Well, no, except for somebody lost their sword, so I haven't been able to help much with that. But Bartleby is also partially kind of like a bard, in the sense that he has musicianship. He loves stories of monsters and history. And his musicianship is not great because of his butchered hands, but he's getting there. We're learning a new style, kind of. And with that, I'm going to throw the microphone on over to Longshank CPG.
Thanks very much, Mr. Pickles. Hi guys, my name's Lonchanks EPG. Tonight I'm playing the character Hengist. He's the group's tough, heavily armoured warrior, slightly silent at the moment because he's kind of gone through a family crisis and a slight moral crisis where he saw his sister. His sister's been kidnapped, finally found her, and then she's run off and abandoned him, and he went berserk. And now he's kind of like a little bit, oh, what do? I went berserk. Because he normally prides himself in being a cool-headed, calm warrior. So like that's how he fights. A lot of people get drunk. A lot of people take other supplements or magical supplements to help them fight, and he doesn't need any of that. He's normally quite proud of that, but he kind of went a little bit red mist. And with that, I'll pass it on to Medivac as he's distracted.
No, I wasn't. I was just going to employ. Hello, everybody. I'm Medivac, and I play Hazra Khan. He's nomad from Steps. And he's basically the group's nature leader, in a sense. He likes to wander in the wilderness. When anything goes in a city, he's like a fish out of water.
Sorry. You said city. I thought you said something else.
Go on, pray tell.
Well, more of a shh at the front rather than
yes. When we're in the wilderness, he does become he comes into his own, really. He's a tracker, a survivalist. He's a very skeptical person as well, but while in this company that he's joined, he's now learning things that he didn't believe was possible, but strange things are happening and he's aware of them. He ran to get help last episode, and now he's a little bit worried where he is today. He doesn't have many clothes on because there was a few episodes ago, which we'll have to go back and watch to realise what happened there. And yeah, he's with a good group of people. And with that, I shall pass it on to Im Wills.
Yeah, and
I think we're having the break now.
and Hazra's also, I think Hazra at times becomes very sort of like leadership role, and sort of like commands the group, which I think has sort of like progressed over the last few adventures. So no, I think it's a really nice character development. So let me try to sum up the story as quickly as possible, because there's lots of things that have happened and that need to be sort of like tied into each other. So number one, the party is on the opposite side of the continent from where they originally were. This is because they have been tasked, or they have decided to venture forth and gain 3 artifacts of power that can be used to teleport or get them to something called Cassini, who has the power to stop the evil necromancers, sorcerers, or whatever taking over the world, basically. Bartleby had found the first artifact. Well, he put it on, which is now clamped to his wrist and will not leave go at all. And now and again seems to give him some not very nice visions of what's going on. The party zipped over to the far side of Odes, where they actually found the second artifact, which was Hazrat's treasure, which was a funeral mask. So they had both of these, and they returned to a village called Advent. While they were in Advent, Gulliver was approached by a member of his order, and he was tasked with ensuring that the mystery of the Council of Sorcerers, which had been attacked and disbanded, he was tasked to find out what is going on and hopefully to either prevent or stop it, mainly because he wasn't anywhere near anything and so is beyond suspicion. While he was there, they got captured by a bandit group called the Vipers. They were thrown into prison and they were rescued by Finiel and Laram, who they had accompanied on their quest of Hazrat's treasure. Finial and Laram went off following the Vipers, and the party, because they were very short on weapons, armor, etc., headed off in the other direction towards the main trade route. There they joined Johann's caravan. They did a brief stop in Thorson, where they Hengist and Hazra became lump-hefting champions and were claimed to be champions of Thorson, where Bartleby had his fortune told and was given a potion of what was said to him by the soothsayer to be good fortune, and Gulliver managed to attract a young lady who is currently travelling with the caravan. Last adventure, the caravan stopped and they were investigated a strange ghost story that happened on the edge of the road, and they were encountered a spirit which Bartleby and Hazra fled for their lives as soon as they saw it, and it was only the noble Hengist and Gulliver that actually stood their ground and was able to defeat it, despite Hengist being lifted up and nearly impaled onto a branch. The party then carried on towards their town, where they are meant to be meeting Finiel and Laram to see what happened to the Vipers, and they arrived at the town of Aylesford. Aylesford is the town that they were meant the trade route would stop at, and there had been various descriptions of people wanting to go there, etc., etc. However, once they arrived, the site was not what they were expecting at all, since it actually looked like this. It was quite a horrid sight, and it looked like it was infested by a murder of crows, and there was decapitated and bodies with legs and arms literally ripped off. The party actually managed to find somebody who was alive underneath another person who had somehow protected them. The party, quite rightly so, after they heard the murmur, turned the body over, only to find that the ground underneath had sealed the chest wound and gut wound that this person had. And as they turned them over, there was a lovely sound as the bleeding started, and despite Gulliver trying to heal the party, the person, he let out a few words, and that related to something like the necromancer is back, or some of words of that description. And that is where we left it last time. So does anybody have any questions or anything before we start the session off?
Yeah, I'd like to say Hazard did not run away and flee. He actually went to get help.
Yes, yeah. And fell over and dropped his spear and
picked up a squirrel.
Picked up a squirrel instead. Yeah, and I think you were something like, were you nearly like 100 meters away when you...
Possibly.
In the dark.
What is distance when you're trying to help friends?
Yeah, but you ran off without any form of light, I think. Yeah.
I had the light of Amiel in my heart.
And I think everybody... As Bartleby just smiles radiantly. Okay.
Convert number uno.
Yeah. Bartleby's got a list. Yeah, that's one done. Okay, is there any questions that anybody would like to ask before we start today's session?
No.
Okay, excellent.
Luck points.
So luck points will be refreshed. Magic points, I do believe you had a rest or something in between.
We did, yes.
Yeah, I've lost one due to the
heal spell. And the only other thing that I would like to remind you about is that in the end of last session, Gulliver asked about the doors up at the top of this building here, and those were shut but not barred. And that
wasn't the black stuff on there. It was burnt, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So if I just quickly give you a recap of what this place looks like. So the important thing is that there's corpses everywhere around the place. There was the squawk of crows. There was no sign of no sounds of activity from the hamlet, but there was wisps of smoke coming from various places. And now that you're in there, it's quite obvious that this is from some kind of burning rather than actual fires. You knew that there were corpses littered around the place bearing ragged wounds, some missing limbs or heads, and many of them look like they've been ripped to bits. You can see from the picture that a lot of the buildings have huge gaping holes in them, and these, you can quite clearly see from the picture, have been broken into the buildings. It hasn't been, nothing's come out of the buildings, it's definitely been thrown in. A lot of doors stand open if they're not actually bashed to bits, but the town hall, church, or whatever you want to call it up at the top does actually have its doors shut, but there's also some burning there. And the guy that you just turned over has just died after he commented about the necromancer. Yeah, so what would you like to do, guys?
Does it look like any of the town folk were actually trying to defend themselves? Are there any discarded weapons, or?
You can see that many of the bodies seem to have some kind of weapon either near them, and interestingly enough, a lot of the arms that appear to have been ripped from the torso of people are still clutching various items that would be classed as an armament. So it might be anything from a pitchfork to a blacksmith hammer, but it's almost as if they did attack with it, that was the first thing that maybe was ripped off, rather than actually being defended against.
Hasru wants to think back to Yubin Falls, and could he have a look for any tracks that are like the lizard goblins that we saw at Yubin Falls?
Yeah. Okay then. So
it's very similar to that village there.
Yeah.
So I want to look around on the floor. Any strange marks on the floor, like they're not human?
Okay, so Johan has parked the caravans, and he looks quite pale and shocked, and he seems to be whispering things to Utuk, his sort of like co-owner, and they're sort of like discussing things, and you notice that it's a very hushed scene behind you. So Hazra, you can start going off and venturing around the village, sort of like looking for anything to do with tracks or anything like that. What about the rest of you? What would you like to do?
Angus is going to make his way towards the church, because he thinks that's if where people might have sort of like hidden or made a last sort of stand of the villagers, that's where he thinks that would be. So he wants to go and have a look in the church. Okay,
so Hengist is heading off to the church at the back. And what about Bartleby and Gulliver?
Gulliver's going to he's going to, as he sees Hengist going over there, he's going to say, Hengist, do you not think you should be armed just in case there's something in there?
Hengist, yeah. Hengist
he's going to look around to see whether or not he can I don't know, see a suitable weapon that Hengist might be able to use.
Yeah, hang on. Just let me roll something here.
There's no sort of like militia or town guard or anything. I take it it's sort of like Forston, is it? As in, it's not.
Okay, so yeah. I mean, this looks a lot bigger than Thorson in any case, but I mean, you can sort of like start going round and checking, seeing what the general, the rest of the bodies are like, if you wish. Hengist, there is a sword nearby that you would actually wield with proficiency. So if you wish to uncurl the the hand of the man or woman who's it's just sort of like the sword, and then the arm seems to be ripped off by the sort of like the shoulder. But of course, with rigor mortis, the fingers are still. You probably have to break them.
Use your heel.
Yeah, you probably have to snap the fingers in order to get the sword out of it. But it doesn't seem to have any blood or anything on it. But it does seem to be reasonably well made.
Okay, Hengist will do that. He'll just pick that up on his way to the church doors.
Okay then. So back to Bartleby and Gulliver. Are you going around inspecting the rest of the bodies?
No. I was just going to look to see whether or not I could find anything suitable for. Yeah. But if Gulliver sees that Hengist has found a sword, then Gulliver wants to go over to where Johann is, and he wants to ask him. He wants to say, Johann, when you met us on the road, where were you coming from?
Okay then, yeah. So you can head off to Johann and discuss. Bartleby, what would you like to do? The first thing, can you please roll for me a devotion or religion check if you've got any of those skills? You'll obviously have devotion, but you can augment it with religion if you've got any suitable skill there, knowledge skill.
I don't think I have a lore of religion. I just have my passion and my obsession with history and monsters and devotion to my goddess.
Yeah, so you can actually just roll your devotion, but it'll be an easy to very easy task because it's easily minutes. Hazra, when you do yours, you can also be easy because you've got plenty of time here. So you actually notice, Bartleby, that it is a church up at the front because it bears a symbol. I'm just making sure that I give you the right name because I just remembered that. Hang on. I think it is the god. It's the god Wyn, W-Y-N, and you recognise this as one of the new gods, and it's actually the god that's worshipped by crafters. And it's like the god of smiths and carpenters, and they look for that sort of like protection, to make perfection. To make the perfect weapon, etc. I'll copy the details into your Discord, so you've got it, because your character would be aware of this. Okay then, so. Hazra, let's do you first. Roll your tracking. Nice. So you just changed your token as well to Hazra. You sort of like take some time to go around the ground, and a lot of the ground is almost like blood sodden. This, whatever's happened here, it has caused the people to bleed extremely rapidly. It hasn't been sort of like stabs or anything like that. It's literally arms and legs and heads have been ripped off. You notice that there seems to be something rather big in this place. It doesn't look like there was lots of people. The only people appears to be the villagers, but you figured that it was something quite large, and
like a bear attack.
No, bigger. probably more attuned to what you saw in the Duke's throne room.
Oh, like the
Minotaur.
like
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
bear man.
Yeah. So you sort of like, and just to let you know now, because you're moving around here, all the crows have now flew off, but they're just sitting on the edge of the houses, and every now and again, you sort of like, you go away and you notice that one flies down and finishes pecking out the eye of a soldier, a human, a smith or something like that, and you just, as you turn around and sort of like gesture to it, it sort of like flies off, squawking quite menacingly to you. Gulliver, yeah, what would you like to say to Johan? All at once?
Gulliver.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I saw something really. I watched the Greyhawk channel, and it's really funny because when somebody's muted there, everybody goes, "Yeah, okay, yeah." You can see the person giving this massive description, and we can't hear them at all.
Well, that just be nasty.
Hello, hi, how are you?
Yeah. So yeah, what?
So, when Gulliver went up to him, he asked about when they met him, they first met the party on the road. When Johan, when we met him, where had he been travelling from?
Yeah. Okay then. So he actually says to you that
Gulliver wants to watch him sort of like really carefully, just to see whether or not he can tell whether or not he's the information that he's getting is actually true.
So he says, I think he's talked about this before, and I'll show you why, because
It's on the map, isn't it? We did it from
this is the map, and you can see that I've sort of like carved out some of it. So he actually came from Lorraine here, and then he had actually not gone far right the way down to Norport, but he had come from Charsen, just there at the bottom, and was working his way up to Aylesford, and then he would then turn around. But you can roll. I was going to say judge intentions, but that's the wrong game. Insight, yeah, if you wish.
I also want to. Gulliver
he seems to be telling the truth.
Yeah, Gulliver also wants to say, Have you ever been to a town called Advent?
He looks quite shocked at the moment, Johan, and he's just sort of like looks down and just sort of like shakes his head rather numbly, as if he's still trying to take in what's actually gone on here. And you four are quite seasoned veterans of this sort of destruction, but Johan doesn't seem to be at all. Yutuk seems a lot more stony face. You've often, he's the big silent one that says nothing, and you sort of like pick up that he's probably quite used to this sort of scene. He's obviously been in combat. And Bartleby, did I ask what you were doing? I forgot.
You gave me some information.
Oh, yes.
But I haven't.
Yeah. So Hengist is going off to the church. What would you like to do?
I'm going to take a mental note. Hengist is heading to the church because I want to get back to that. But I feel concerned about Johan. You said I saw him looking rather upset by this.
Yeah,
So
he looks pale. He looks a little bit green around the gills at the moment.
I'd like to go and see if I can pray for him. And I'm not doing it directly because I know he's a follower of Sindra, and I don't think he would look too kindly upon me just putting my hands on him and giving him the light.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm approaching over there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you go over, and Hengist, you head over to the doors of the church. So you sort of like crack this person's fingers in order to get the sword out. I don't know whether or not I said this, but just to make sure, there's no blood on the sword at all. It doesn't look like it's been used at all. And you get to the double doors at the church. When you get closer to them, you notice that the doors are not locked at all. One is, there's a slightly ajar. But that's it. It doesn't look like it's barricaded or anything like that. It does look black, as you can see from the picture. It almost like looks as if whether or not it's been tried to set a light to, and it hasn't taken. Maybe the god looked favourably down on the chapel, but it looks like there might have been some liquid or something poured onto it, but the building didn't take and set on fire. Yeah, so you're at the door. What would you like to do?
So he's going to carefully open it with his left hand. So he's got the sword in his right hand, and he's just going to open one of the doors. I don't know if they open to or from.
They open out towards.
So he's going to stand slightly to one side. So he's going to open the left hand door, standing slightly to the right inside of it, and he's just going to open it.
Yeah, so you open one of the doors, and as you open it, it seems to be it seems a little bit stiff when you open it, and it's then that you sort of like notice that as you pull it open, there seems to have been a man's foot, almost like attached to the outside of the door, and you can see that there's definitely a guy just inside the door. He's flat out on his front. His legs are to you, and his hands are stretched out towards the back of the church. You can also see down the nave, down the middle aisle, there seems to be a wide, almost like red carpet of blood, coming right through down to where he is now. And Bartleby, did you want to roll a skill with Johan or not?
Yes, I did. I wanted to try, I believe it's influence. And my goal there was to approach and express empathy towards you're looking very, very poorly here. I know you're not likely used to seeing all this carnage. Perhaps I can alleviate your concerns.
Yeah, okay then. Roll away.
Ow.
Yeah, he almost like looks thankful to you, and you notice that he's got water in his eyes. He does look rather green, and just as you're talking to him, you can almost like see him suppressing the bile or the vomit coming up from his stomach into his mouth. But to be honest, he doesn't look like that doesn't look like what he's bothered about. It doesn't look like he's bothered about the carnage. His eyes watering is almost as if he is upset about something, as if something has, as if coming here or seeing the sight has sort of like caused some kind of an emotional response from him. And he seems to be looking around at the bodies from his vantage point on the wagon, but he also seems to be looking around the shops. And just to let you know, if you imagine a clock, you've come in at the sort of like the 6 o'clock, the church is at the 12 o'clock, but round the outside, so although you can see some of the buildings on this side, there's similar buildings on the other side as well. And there's sort of like almost like a circle with the well in the middle. Yeah.
Is he crying about loss of profit?
Gulliver wants to say to him, Johan, perhaps you should take the wagons to the outskirts of town and wait for us there.
Yeah, he sort of like looks at you and he says, Utuk sort of like looks at Johan and sort of like stares at him, and Johann just sort of like, he just seems to utter some words, and he sort of like seems to be gasping, trying to utter some words, and he doesn't actually say it, but one of the other caravanners almost like come up behind Bartleby and Gulliver together, and he sort of like leans into you and says in a quiet voice, but quite a hoarse voice, as if he's trying his best to be sympathetic but probably failing, and he just sort of like whispers to you, and he just says that, he goes, "Johann's wife lives here, or lived." And he sort of like then sort of like turns, and Johann sort of like hears a bit of the conversation and sort of like looks, and then the caravanner sort of like bows his head almost in shame and sort of like moves back to the side further behind with the 4 caravans. Yeah, anybody can go, I don't mind.
I want to just immediately step forward and place my hands on his shoulders in a very I'm sorry, what's the word, sympathetic way, I guess. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to immediately start doing the prayer of calmness for Mamriel.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
To dampen his passions, to roll.
Oh yes, first crit. That's a nice crit. Yeah, and he seems to be. You feel almost like the great emotion of sort of like loss, and you sort of like cast the spell, and it seems to sort of like suppress it somewhat. And what it actually succeeds in doing is almost like letting. He's been trying to suppress what appears to be grief, and just as you cast it and calm him somewhat, it almost like releases that grief in a positive way, because he shouldn't keep it within himself. And as you cast it, he just sort of like almost like bends over, his head or his face goes into his hands, and you just hear him starting to sob. Hazra, you've made your finish roundabout investigation now.
I want to walk up to Mr. Bartleby and go, "Mr. Bartleby, do you remember in Advent that huge creature that appeared in the courtroom? It seems to be the tracks I have found are very similar to that creature that appeared through that strange gate that we went through. That's all I can think." Lindo, sorry. Lindo, sorry.
Yes, the horned cow goblin that came in through the portal. I remember
That's
that.
right. In the gateway that we stepped through the Master Gulliver's school. Yes, the tracks I find are very, very much like that creature would leave here. I'm worried. It was a huge creature, and yes, I could see it doing this to a village.
That's true. I could see that as well.
We need to make the others aware. Where he's Hengist, he's gone alone again, hasn't he?
Yeah, that's a little bit worrisome. I'll go find Angus.
No. You stay here with the caravan. I think
you could both go.
If you go out here, this is true. Yes, I will come with you. We'll go and find Mr. Hengist together and tell him the same. Where's Gulliver?
Right next to me, right?
I spoke to you about 10 seconds ago. I said,
it's like, so where's Gulliver? Where's Gulliver? Oh, there you are.
I haven't gone anywhere.
He's a halfling.
I've fallen over him again. Shall we go to the town hall at the top then with Hengist and inform him of what I found? Let's go.
Yes.
So, whilst this has been going on, Hengist has been. He's seen the body. He's seen the sort of like the smeary, wavy blood trail up the middle of the aisle, and he's going to have been walking to follow. He's been following that blood trail, seeing if there's what else is in the church, basically. See if there's any other bodies. And
yeah. So as Gulliver, are you going as well, Bartleby?
Well, Gulliver's sort of like going to start following, and then as he's doing that, he's sort of like looking around, and he sees the big holes in the buildings, and all. He's just sort of like stops and looks at those, and as they're going on, he's going to go over and actually have a look at those, and have a look through one of the. He wants to see whether or not he can see whether or not something's been thrown through it.
Okay, then, yeah. Okay, then. So could you roll? I know this sounds a bit silly, but can you just roll for me a D8? Gulliver, and then tell me.
Sorry, this is a D100 system.
I know, but I've only got 8 points of interest. I didn't do not one. That's the well.
Roll again.
Which you've looked down. Roll it again. Oh yeah, that's a nice one. That's a nice one for me. Right. Okay then. So as Hazra and Bartleby, you approach the church. Or the chapel. Hengist is already inside, and as you get to the door, you see what I previously described for him. Hengist, you sort of like hear some noise behind you and sort of like turn around on high alert. But my roll 20s has crashed.
No.
Make sure you change your token when you come back in.
I will do.
Yes, like I did.
I haven't got anything now. Oh, there we go. There's so many names of tokens you could be now. I could be something different every.
We can't. I could just be animated armor or draft horse.
Yeah. So you, yes, Hengist. So you're sort of like on a high alert. You know, clutching your sword, and you sort of like hear some noise behind you, and you quickly turn round, because apart from the squawk of crows, there's no noise here at all. And you see that Bartleby and Hazra are at the door. You're at what appears to be the front of the church or chapel, Hengist, and you can see that there seems to be some kind of almost like wooden table there that seems to have offerings on it. It seems to be items of jewelry and ingots of metals and a few sort of like that looks really cheap gems. It doesn't look very important at all, or precious at all. You do see that round the base of the table appears to be a range of weapons and shields and armor, and they just seem to be put there and very on purpose around the edge of the table, and some of them are sort of like lying down, some of them would be propped up, some of the shields are sort of like up at one point. There also seems to be other items around the table that seems to be things like really well crafted pieces of jewelry, some bags and satchels sort of like type things, and they just seem to be around the table. You also notice that behind that there's two side doors that are not going outside, they seem to be going further back in the chapel, and you notice that the one to the left is actually open, and you notice that the blood smear carries on round into that left one, as if it's almost like guiding you there. There's that description. And then Hazra and Bartleby, you arrive. So Hazra and Bartleby, what would you like to do when you see what's happening? And Hengist up at the front of the church.
Okay, has we seen the blood smear going through the door and down the nave? He's going to say to Bartleby, keep behind me because there's great death here. Something has happened here. Keep behind me, and I will lead the way. I've got the spear in my right hand.
Mm.
I'm going to move forward to where I can see Hengist is at the moment before he goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay then. And Bartleby, as you pass the person on the floor that is face down and arms outstretched like this, almost like zombie fashion, but on the floor, faces down, as if he's being dragged. Almost like to the door, then almost like forgotten about. You do recognise that he seems to be in some kind of thesis vestments, or he looks as if he's probably would have been the thesis of this chapel. You do notice that he has on his belt what appears to be quite a fine looking dagger. Of some description. It's scabbard, but it's quite well made, and you do notice that on his fingers he seems to have, every single finger seems to have some kind of well crafted ring or band. They don't have precious gems in it, but it's almost like twisted metal going around them. And just roll a commerce skill for me, please. You can take minutes, it's all right. But you don't need it, as Bartleby takes the form of a guard.
Wait, why am I? Oh, my cat was walking.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Blame the cat.
Yeah.
The cat.
Let's just shoot it.
No, that'd be a catastrophe.
That's nasty.
It would be a catastrophe. You look at the items of jewellery, and they're probably they're very well crafted. You don't think the metal is particularly expensive metal, but they will probably get a lot just for the sheer crafting of them. Gulliver, you've gone over to one of these buildings, and
he just sort of like peers.
Yeah, and
sort of like peers in, and
yeah,
sort of like sees what he can.
Yeah, so when you look into which one was it? Number 5.
Number 5.
Yeah, and when you look into number 5, as you get closer and closer, you recognise the writing over the top, because there's only you and Bartleby that can literally read. You also notice that there's the symbol that a lot of people use in Odes because of the lack of reading and writing, that signifies it as a general store. It's nothing sort of like in particular, it's just sort of like everything. And as you get to the doorway, you can see that, just imagine that I'm describing this one here, that it's as if the door, you can see splinters of wood actually inside the building, as if some creature or some human that's quite massive has almost like taken a club or their fist and just whacked it through the door and shattered it over. Also in here is something that there seems to be a lot of bodies in here, quite a lot of bodies, but they seem to be flung left, right and centre, and there seems to be people sort of like their body seems to be at strange angles and up against the wall, and as if something has literally tried to just sort of like taken a group of people and just waded through them, sort of like knocking them left, right and centre. There's a huge amount of blood here that is soaked into the floorboards, and you also notice that there's a whole load of goods in the shop, a lot more than you're normally used to seeing. Shops don't sort of like make things. It's normally that they're either made to order or they get sold straight away. But there seems to be a huge amount in here. There seems to be sacks of what could be anything from wheat or flour or something like that. You can see that there's wooden bowls all stacked up, and it's as if they were preparing for the caravan to arrive.
The people in it, does it look to be more like women and children rather than...
Yeah, it's mainly women and children. Yeah, there seem to be mainly women and children. There do seems to be some older men. And some of them, it's obvious that a few of them have had weapons at one point, maybe clubs or pitchforks or the odd sword here and there. But they don't look like they were well made. It literally looks as if something has burst into this and literally almost like ploughed through them all, and they're scattered and broken them, left, right, and centre. And you almost like look across and see this perfectly stacked pile of wooden bowls, and it's almost like ironical that in this almost like this massacre, they're still just stood there. As if everything sort of like happened around them, and just by luck it didn't hit anything.
I mean, taking that into account, Gulliver's good to sort of like almost like just stand in the entranceway and just sort of like really quietly and just almost like close his eyes and listen to see whether or not, because there's a few bodies in here, but he's listening to see whether or not he can hear any
okay,
so moaning or gasping.
So make a
he might still be alive.
Okay, make a perception check then. You can do it. You can take minutes, so it could be easy. Yeah, you're rolling well tonight, guys. Really well.
Yeah, we had no combat yet. You don't hear or sense anything at all. They seem to be well and truly dead. There seems to be no moaning. It's literally just a one-room building that has a sort of like a doorway to the back, but you can't hear anything. There's nothing moving on the second floor or anything like that. But something you do notice just while you're stood there and you sort of like turn your head to listen, so your ears is actually the shop next door to you, because it has a sign on it that you've never seen before. In all the towns that you've been in, you've not seen this sign before, and it has some words up there as well, over the sort of like the top of it. And yeah, so Hengist and Hazra and Bartleby, you're all in the building. I'm assuming that Hazra, you've got up to the front with Hengist now, and yes. Bartleby, you're a few paces behind them. What do you guys wish to do?
Well, I'll be a human shield for Mr. Bartleby. I'll be like, stay behind me in case anything comes that jumps out at us.
I nervously wanted to draw the knife from the downed priest, see if I can protect myself with that elegant dagger.
Yeah, it's a straight blade. It's quite a thick blade. It looks almost like a very short sword, as if it's been like a gladius that's been sort of like reduced. So it's not crafted in a curve or anything like that. It's definitely a thrusting weapon, and that's it. Yeah.
Just to confirm, you would not class it as a small blade then, correct?
Yeah, I would do, yeah.
Okay, then I might have, marginally better proficiency.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll keep following Hazra now that I can protect the rear.
Yeah.
Mr. Hengist, what is this on the floor? It's blood. Well, it seems to be going this way. Is it being dragged from this body at the door? Or is it as the body crawls to the door?
I thought more likely the body's been dragged, and then Hengist is going to gesture towards the left-hand door that's still slightly open. From there to the double doors at the front of the church. I was about to go and explore that room.
you say, I should take a moment to just have a look and see if you see any handprints, as if somebody's crawled, bleeding.
Yeah, roll a tracking roll for me. Oh, wow. Yeah, let's go into combat because I want to see what happens. I really want to. Yeah, no, it's
Yes, no.
It's really been that this creature has been, this person's been dragged from this room out and down the nave, and then almost like deposited near the door.
Right, sorry, mental thought. Okay, I've seen the tracks, and he looks like he has been dragged, but I can't understand why and why from this room. Hengist, let us go explore. You lead, and I will be on your right.
Let us explore. You go first.
I will be on your right. I have no armor, so you lead the way, my friend. Pat.
Does Hengist have armor?
Hengist has got armor everywhere apart from his head and his arms.
All right, cool.
Do you have to get right leg?
Okay, so you all three of you make your way to the side door, almost like trying to avoid the sodden sort of like drag mark. And in this room, as you turn around the corner, you can see in quite clearly, and it seems to be some kind of library. It's quite small, but there seems to be numerous books there. What appears to be really interesting is that the books a lot of them are scattered onto the floor, but you don't think there's been a struggle here. It's almost as if somebody was trying to almost like search for something. And you do notice that on the actual table in here, there is a tome that is open, and you can see that there's what appears to be a finger smear, as if the priest might have been flicking through, found something, and then was yanked out backwards, and the blood or something from his finger has trailed down. So, and that's how you can tell it's not a case that somebody's been in here and just knocked it all over the place. It's more as if somebody was looking for something, maybe looking for a particular book or something like that. And there is this open book on the table. Yeah, Gulliver. Yeah, you've seen this strange symbol and word.
What does it look like?
The symbol, it looks like a wine container. You know, that you remember
like
that.
A barrel?
No, something more that Basil would bring to the table when people ordered wine.
Oh, like a pitcher.
Yeah, something like that, but more rounded. It seems to have almost like a rounded sort of like base to it, and then a long, almost like stem.
It doesn't look like a tavern, though.
Well, you're sort of like, it doesn't look from the outside because you're quite familiar with the tavern sign and the word. And this word doesn't look familiar to you. You could probably read it, but what I'm saying is that it doesn't look like a shop that you've seen before. You know, like a cartographer's or something like that. You also do notice that it has this veranda round it, and it looks like it's quite important.
What he's going to do, he's going to spell out the words to see whether or not they ring any bells. Has he heard the word before in his, in his lifetime? But if not, if he hasn't, then what I don't want to do, I don't want to say, oh, what does the word say? And then me act on that information. So I just wanted to, has he ever heard the...
so you sort of like leave where you are and sort of like come round to it to sort of like get a better view with it. and as you study it, it sort of like reminds you of something that you've seen before, and in your teachings of your order, and it suddenly dawns on you what the word actually is. And I've just sent it to you in chat, in Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you wish to do with that information?
He wants to. We're talking this building, aren't we? Because I was.
Yes. The one with the veranda outside.
He wants to go up the. He wants to go up the stairs, and he wants to again sort of like peer around the door that's sort of like being to see what's inside.
Yeah, it seems to be it's quite ransacked in here. There's a lot of broken glass bottles on the floor. On one side there seems to be a whole load of jars with words on them that seems to be knocked off. It looks like there's been quite if I say bull in a china shop, that's a sort of like atmosphere in here. There's no bodies in here, but there was that body outside that the crow's looking at the moment on the picture.
Does it look like it's been ransacked? Because the last one almost looked like somebody.
It looks as if
killing the people within it.
It's still It still looks like that. It looks as if something's just gone into this and just sort of like flung their arms around and burst through the door and just sort of like flung their arms around, maybe trying to catch somebody or just out of sheer wantonness. It just you do notice that there's a door in the back, by the way, that obviously goes to a room further behind that is ajar, but it's not burst at all. You can see it's not knocked in at all. Okay, let's nip back to the chapel when Gulliver has a think about that, since you guys have had time to consider what to do. So Hazra, Bartleby and Hengist, what would you like to do?
So Hengist is going to look at this book and then turn to Bartleby and say, it looks like this priest was after this particular book, and was in somewhat of a panic. Could you have a look at it, see if it's any use to us?
Don't mind if I do. I'm gonna saunter on up and put on my best reading eyes.
Okay, so
while he's doing that, so before he does that, there's only one door in here, isn't there? And there's no doors out.
No.
Okay, so when does that? I will swap places and go to the door he just entered and take up a defensive position with a spear, just in case. Just watch.
Okay.
This is sort of like going to peer over Bartleby's shoulder. He's looking at the book. It makes no sense to him, but he's showing enough interest that he's like watching intently.
Yeah, so Bartleby, as you sort of like approach this, or what appears to be some kind of reading desk, you sort of like gaze around, and you can recognize words, you can read and write the language, and you notice that these books, it seems to be some kind of library, but it seems to have a very specific focus. It seems to be a lot of books about, you're almost like in heaven. It seems to be all about lore and ages past and great battles, and talks about monsters and mythical creatures and dragons. And you just sort of like look around, and honestly, every book that you see, you sort of like think, oh, I want to read that. I want to read that. I want to read that. There also seems to be a lot of books about what says on the binders, on the side of the book and on their covers, say about the ancient gods and goddesses. And it's almost as if the title suggests that they were almost like, as we would talk about Greek mythology, it's almost like that, as if it's saying the ancient gods, i.e. they've gone and that's it. And when you get to the table, there is a book open, and it talks about, you just sort of like scan it down, and it talks about things about ridding the world of the great evil, and it seems to, there's something about a prophecy, and you notice that your finger, where the finger smudges at, it's almost as if the page has been opened up, and then somebody's almost like gone to point at the word and then been dragged away, and it seems to be almost like their last dying effort to actually point to this word. And you look down at it, and it says this.
Banana.
Okay, it's come to you in Discord.
Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that.
And Gulliver, what do you wish to do? Oh, Gulliver, just before you went into the van, into the building, you noticed that the caravanners have pulled the wagon slightly out of the village, and it looks like they're sort of like putting them into some kind of circle when they camp, but it's way out of the village's boundaries.
What sort of time of day are we coming up?
You arrived just after midday, didn't you?
Right. Okay. Before he goes, he wants to go in, but before he does, he just wants to turn around again and just sort of like look at all the bodies. There's nothing out of place, i.e. there's no body that's not human, or no body that's dressed different.
Well, some of them are definitely dressed differently.
But I mean, there's not a guy that's, you know, sort of like, there's nobody that looks like one of the Vipers or one of the Vipers or
no.
dressed like
these are all townsfolk.
Right.
It's quite obvious that very few of them have any armour on at all. Many of them are just wearing like peasants' garb. You can actually recognise the blacksmith is out there because he's still got his thick leather apron on, and you know it's obvious that the nearby hammer was his. It's definitely all townsfolk.
So from what Gulliver can see on the outside, is that whatever attacked them, whether or not it would be one person or 100 people or whatever, it doesn't look like the town folk managed to kill one. Right.
Not at all. It just looks like the whole village has been wantedly massacred.
Okay, so Gulliver wants to, he's going to draw his dagger that he's got. It's not in a sheath, it's just stuck in the front of his belt. And he's going to, as quietly as possible, he's going to start making his way across the... it's probably going to be really difficult because if it's been ransacked, there's probably glass and everything on it.
You can roll a stealth roll, though.
Yeah, but he's going to try to quietly go over to the door. The
back door, yeah.
To the door in the corner,
yeah,
that's slightly ajar, but he's going to be ready to bolt if needs be.
Okay, so just roll your stealth then.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you sort of like...
I'm going to use a point of luck.
Okay, so as you sort of like head through, you're right, you do see piles of glass every now and again, and you sort of like carefully pick your way through them. In the back room, it's very much like one wall is completely like the same as one of the walls in the front area. That just seems to be the whole wall is made up of shelves, and on each shelf there seems to be a little glass container or metal container, like a biscuit tin, and they all seem to be labelled, and you can sort of like see as you look down, there seems to be what appears to be names of plants or herbs, or there's something that sounds quite disgusting, like things like glands. You notice, and there seems to be some things that are called things like fire water in a sealed sort of like metal tin. The other thing is there seems to be a table that has a whole load of paraphernalia on it, and you recognize this from being around your order, and you can sort of like see that this is actually what it's used for. What you recognize from the shop. The other thing that you notice is that there seems to be volume 1 to 12 of books. They all seem to be similarly bound, and they seem to be on a shelf. And you can see they say things like things like that, for want of a better word.
Right.
But there is a table as well, and the table has an open book on it. There's no blood marks on it or anything, but there is something that catches your eye, and when you look at it, you see something very familiar on one of the pages. And it says, let me just get the words right. It says around it, it says this. And the picture you recognize as that.
Where did the picture come from?
No, I just...
Oh, right, yes. Sorry, yes.
Got it.
That's what I was thinking. The other question that I was going to ask was, do I see anything in the room, or even as I was going over there, that could resemble the or have something to do with the order of Kraken?
No.
There's no symbols or anything, because Gulliver's well aware that the things practiced by the order of the Kraken.
Yeah, it's almost as if it's a quite strange in the sense that, even in this place, there seems to be no recognition of your sort of magic at all. It's as if it's just been snuffed out, and you would expect in this town or Thorston or somewhere to be portals that would allow you to travel.
But Johan was saying that the sorcery orders aren't as well known in this part. Can I study the text a bit more, bit closer, just to get to see whether or not I can understand, having recognised the symbol?
Are you staying in the shop to do this, or do you wish to take it outside?
I'm going to stay in the shop to begin with, so I'm just in the back room. So
that's absolutely fine.
But I'll probably move round the table because there's no other doors coming out of this room.
No, not at all.
So I'll probably move round the table so I'm facing the door, and I'll put the dagger on the table and I'll turn the book round
cool.
so I can probably see
it. Just roll your literacy skill for me, please. It's not, you can read it, I just want to know how much information you get from it. Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, let's go back to the chapel. Hazra, you're standing on guard. Bartleby, you're looking at the book, and Hengist, you're looking over Bartleby's shoulder as he looks at all this scribbling in the book. What would any of you like to do?
Noticing that I've got my cohort behind me, I'm going to just start reading out loud, as if it's just for myself. I'm mumbling, prophecy, bring all evil. And I put my finger where the finger mark was on the book and say, that's upsetting.
Yeah.
It says,
do you want to read out what is actually written there?
What is upsetting, Mr. Bartleby? What is it?
Yeah, I want to read out what's written there.
Okay, then. So I'll just start reading what's there, and anytime you want me to stop, then let me know. And if I'm halfway through, sure as I see Gulliver drifting off, then I'll stop and go back to him. Okay, so you read out aloud. So this is Bartleby, guys, reading out aloud. And you read from the page and it says, "The Chaos Mother is a fragment of the Chaos Rune, created when the great expanse of all time created the old gods and the renegade gods of the barbarians. Whilst these gods were fixed in their natures, chaos was without a single form and adapted constantly and randomly, destroying, though often without plan or deliberation, the work of the other deities. One of its many forms was the being that came to be known as the Chaos Mother, a fickle, inquisitive goddess that switched its appearance between goddesses, tricking the male gods and creating all manner of havoc. Shunned from the lands of heaven, she took the form of a world spider and spun the spirit maze as her web in parody of heaven. Its pathways buried deep, far below the mountains of Gartharius, and so she came to the realm which was in those times filled with frightened primitive, reliant on the spirits and totems that offered only limited power. The Chaos Mother steadily replaced them as the dominant deity and gifted those early theisists with secret knowledge of creation and change. With these miracles, the primitive priest shamans, as they were known, created the chaos hybrids from prisoners, slaves, and sacrifices. To further guide them, the Chaos Mother created a rift in her spirit maze that allowed a colony of beasts to flock into the realm. They offered the Chaos Mother a certain degree of worship, but also brought with them new magic, sorcery, which they cunningly spread throughout the world using select agents and intermediaries. Otherwise, they are the realm's greatest secret, shadowy manipulators who dwell in darkness and tamper with reality in subtle yet obscene ways. As the primitors of the realm gained in knowledge and power, the gods saw that the Chaos Mother had seized control of the realm and decided to take action against her. Armies commanded by the priest kings of the realm marched against the Chaos Mother's rule and supplanted her. The Chaos Mother was defeated, and although she could not be killed, she remade the spirit maze into a prison that cut the Chaos Mother's cords from the fabric of the realm. As her maze became her tomb, the Chaos Mother decreed that, just as a mortal born of a god had imprisoned her, so two mortals would become gods and free her. Until 10 years ago, a corrupt and vengeful sorcerer, a recipient of dark secrets called the Necromancer, stumbled upon the legends of the Chaos Mother, and through blasphemous research and eldritch magic reached through the spirit maze and heard her calling. The Chaos Mother revealed her prophecy and spoke of how to fulfill it, and the Necromancer made it his life work to create the solution. He intends to become the Chaos Father, and so transform into a demigod of terrifying supernatural power himself. To perform the summoning ritual, he requires 3 things: the Chaos Mother's chalice, the Chaos Father's blood, and the life of one who has pure beauty. And that's where it stops. Gulliver, you read this book, I think, weren't you?
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the pages where I recognise the actual symbol.
It seems that as you flick through it and you read everything, you get a general feeling of what has actually gone on here. And there's quite a number of pages that talk about it, but it talks...
Is it more of a journal?
It seems to be... or some kind of diary or something like that.
Right.
It's written in first person and it sort of like keeps saying I, but it has a whole lot of recounts of things that happened in the past. And you notice as you flick through, because you're not reading it word by word, you're just sort of like flicking through, and you notice things like that when sorcery magic had been extinguished, and it talks about no more sorcerers were no more in the realm, and it goes on about needing to provide some support and assistance, and not forgetting all that has gone before. And it talks about reinventing themselves and forming a new order. And it's at that point then that it seems to talk a lot more about alchemy then. And the bit with the symbols that you recognize, these words that says creation points, that you notice that this seems to be some kind of a myth or a legend, but it's written that they possess great powers and it can make strong alchemy potions and things like that. And you do notice that as you look at one where these portals are meant to be, you can also see that there's one the scale is incredibly big, but there seems to be one almost like hovering over Advent. In the on a map you can see it's been scrawled Advent, and it's almost like talking as if sorcery magic was abandoned, and because of the cost and because of the threat and because of the danger, and it seems that the order almost like transformed and became alchemists in order to help foresee the future. There's words like soothsayer and fortune teller and herbalists and things like that. And you suddenly begin to realize, Gulliver, that everything sort of like clicks into place now. And this is why you can't see any of the order. You can't see magical portals in major towns or anything like that. It just, and then you suddenly think, so probably the only entrance that you know of was from Matilda's tower. And that's why you haven't seen anything else. And it's as if they have just abandoned that sort of magic and converted to alchemy. And they haven't abandoned it because they want to. They've abandoned it because they thought it was best to. And that's it. Anybody can go first and tell me what you would like to do.
So Gulliver's going to take off his backpack, and he wants to open it, and he's going to close this journal book, and he's going to put it in his backpack to take with him.
Yeah. Okay, then that's absolutely fine.
And then he's going to seal that up, pick up his dagger, and he's going to head out. Okay,
and what's Hengist, Hazra, and Bartleby doing?
Hazra's been listening to what Mr. Bartleby's been saying, and he's like, I understand the words, but I don't understand what it means. Some strange spider has been controlling everybody, and has been imprisoned and needs to be freed, or wants to be freed. But it would be bad for all of us. Is this right, Mr. Bartleby?
That's what it sounds like, though I may have to pray to Amriel to guide. What concerns me is when we're captured by those monsters, and the Borkin, they mentioned getting a chalice, and that they got the wrong chalice.
That's right, because we thought they were after the chalice from Hazard's treasure that we were after.
Yeah, this is concerning to me. I'm gonna hold on to this book, and maybe a few others.
I would. Would you like me to get you a room?
A what?
A room?
I thought you said a womb. I was thinking, what?
No. Let us get you. Put on the table the books you wish to take with you, and we will transfer them onto a cart or something we can take with us.
Okay. I'll start pulling off books and all the ones that look interesting, and also holding on to this tome. I'm going to name it Chaos Mother Tome, and I'm going to keep that on me.
Okay.
That will you safe. And perhaps at some point maybe you could teach me the understandings of these squiggly lines.
Yeah. So you can probably is Hengist helping to carry out books as well?
Hengist will probably carry a couple of books, but he doesn't want to sacrifice his fighting ability because he's although it's gone, he think whatever did this is gone. It could return.
So as you quietly steal these books from a religious place of worship and sort of like head out, you can probably have almost like 4 books each. So you can probably have about eight of these books. You can carry them out, but you actually need to use both hands to carry them. Bartleby, I've put a handout in the in your journal section. Can you see it?
Oh yes, I can.
Yeah. So that's the content of the story that I just told you. So because you've got the book, you can have that. I apologise for any incorrect grammar or punctuation as I wrote it. So you sort of like as you come out of the alchemist's Gulliver with your book firmly in your carrying case that nobody can see it, you notice
Mine's in the backpack,
you notice that Hengist comes out carrying a couple of books, and between them Bartleby and Hazra have got sort of like 3 or 4 books between them as they sort of like step over the body that is prostrate on the floor as you come out, and you all of you sort of like come out into the center of the town once more, and you do notice that you've been here a while so far. You've done quite a lot of things. You've read, you investigated, etc. So it's getting almost like dusk-like, and you notice that Johann has built a fire, and he sort of like parked his caravans way out of the town, and he can still see the town and you can still see it, but it's not sort of like on the border or anything. And you sort of like Gulliver, you sort of like see them coming out of the room of the church, because you hear the doors open. You sort of think, what's that? And you just see it's the librarians coming out holding these books, and you sort of like all meet together in the middle of the near the well. Let's say that you all approach each other, and you sort of like
Gulliver's going to say to Hazra, he's going to say, Hazra, you said that you thought that the thing attacked the town was similar to the thing that attacked us in the throne room of the Duke's palace, in the Count's palace in Lindow.
Yes, the tracks that are on the floor. They're from a huge beast or person or man. Huge creature that seems to just rampage through this town. dragging people by the looks of it through.
But then when did it go?
I did not see where it went. Would you like me to do another look around the village to see if I can see the tracks leading the way?
Well, I mean, it might be worth knowing which way it went.
I will do this. I will
If it went at all.
Yeah.
I will do.
The other thing is, well, something that's been nagging at me. Why would it attack this place?
Well, this is Mr. Bartleby has found a most amazing book which seems to have piqued his interest. I don't know the ways of these things, so maybe if Mr. Bartleby would tell you what he has found, then he will be able to explain things to you. And maybe he was looking because there was a priest that was dragged away from the book all the way to the front of the doors of this church building. And he seems to have been looking at this particular book that Mr. Bartleby found, and Mr. Bartleby will explain the wiggly words.
I mean, when Hazra says that Gulliver's going to look over towards the church, how big are the doors? Would they be big enough for this thing that they saw in the throne room to actually get through?
No, not at all.
He's going to say, when Hazra's saying, he's going to say, but you said that the thing that was in the town was that big thing that we saw in Lindo, and I don't think that's going to be able to get through those doors.
You'd be surprised. It's a mighty powerful creature. And to be fair, from
Hazra, it's too big to get through to drag a person.
Oh, I see what you are saying. The creature's too big to go in the building.
Let's just all check Hazra's intelligence score.
Yes. 0 minus 1. And remember, the creature who came into the building in where we were, he in Lindo, he was assisted by humans. So maybe.
So we're saying that whatever's happened here wasn't just one.
No. Have you found any signs of any of those strange markings on the floor that brought the creature to Lindo? Have you found any of the strange markings here?
No, I've found nothing. But there's also there's no other dead people. It's just all people from the town.
I know, it's frightening. It's like something started and killed everybody here to hide what they were doing. It's quite disconcerting, which is a large word for
-1 intelligent person.
Which either suggests that it was that massive creature, or judging from what few weapons I have seen, they seem to have been, the villagers seem to have used, they seem to have been unused. There's no blood on them, but the villagers are all dead.
Is it almost
suggests either magic or they were taken by surprise.
I was going to say the same thing, Hengist. Is it like they drew them, and before they could take the first swing, it was torn from them?
I don't know any magic that can do that.
When we've fought the living dead before, is there any remains on your blades or spears?
If you, I think you've, I think Hengist, you've fought skeletons before.
I have, yes.
Yeah, and
weren't there zombies in the basement at the tavern in?
And in both those cases, I was going to say you fought husk zombies, but that was in D&D. But generally, the zombies and the skeletons that you've battled with before, they had no, there was no blood that poured out of them at all. You fought skeletons in Hazra's burial chamber. All of you were there, weren't you?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, and there was no blood your blades or anything. If anything, you probably both, especially Hengist, probably actually twisted his blade slightly so it actually hit them on almost like on the side of the blade to do more damage. Yeah, but there was certainly no blood that erupted from them or anything like that.
I only. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I only ask because if it was a necromancer's army of dead that had been dripped and dried of all of their organs and blood vessels, perhaps
and
they had weapons to attack and didn't get any remains on their blades.
True, but you would have thought with this number of villagers that they would have at least managed to take down one or two, or maybe even a few of the army, yet no bodies seem to be remaining of anything we've seen, such as the skeletons or zombies of the past.
True.
Hazra, you're going to go off and make a wider search.
I am. I want to have a look to see any tracks leading way.
That's cool.
So I want to start at the church or the town hall and work out from there, see where the tracks have gone from there.
Yeah. What's Hazra, Bartleby? What's Hengist, Bartleby, and Gulliver going to do now?
Well, Hengist is probably.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, Hengist is probably going to go and put the books that he's carrying in the caravan that Bartleby tends to travel in most.
Okay, that's cool. What about Bartleby?
Check on the other the other caravanners.
Yeah. What about Bartleby and Gulliver? What's your plans?
Is there any of the buildings that looks to be designated as the town's tavern?
Yes, there does. I mean, you can probably tell what all the buildings are. Is your plan going to go off and just check and make sure what's in them, or whether or not there's anybody living in there, or what? If you give me a general statement.
my train of thought at the moment is that Darla was coming here to look for Davian, who was a musician.
A musician, yeah.
Yeah, and that if he was trying to earn money, then chances are he would have been in the tavern, maybe playing or outside it to try to get money from.
Okay, then.
So I don't know whether or not as we've been travelling, or when Darla's been talking, whether or not she said anything about Davy and maybe described anything, something that I might be able to use.
Yeah.
To match up. I basically want to see whether or not, or even looking for a young man, but between the ages of 15 and 18, my age.
Yeah.
And just to see whether or not I can find anything out and break the news to her.
Yeah, okay then.
Can I just have memory fresh? Wasn't Darla the one that was taken away from the caravan and killed?
No, that was Matilda.
Matilda.
That's right. Sorry, my apologies. Sorry.
Yeah. Darla's on the caravan at the moment.
Yeah, so Hengist is heading over to the caravan. Gulliver, you're checking out probably the tavern first to see whether or not you can see Davian, and Hazra, you're going around scouting around further out. Just Bartleby that I need to know about. No.
I was going to share the Chaos Mother story with Gulliver, but seeing as he's wandering off, I'll just shrug and go.
You can share it as I wander.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow after you and share the story because it's kind of important.
Okay,
I want to share it with you.
So I know we're due for a break, but I'll just say this one thing and then we'll take the break. So Hengist, you get back to the caravan. They seem to have lit a fire, and that they're sat round very they're very quiet and glum, and they just seem to sit there. You also notice that there's a strange smell as you approach there. It seems to be a very sweet smell. And as you approach, you notice that Johann has by the side of him what appears to be an earthenware pot that has some kind of orangey ready powder in it, and he keeps he takes a handful of it and throws it on the fire, and it's causing this sweet smell, almost like cinnamon smell or nutmeg, and it's definitely keeping the smell of the dying bodies, etc., away. Bartleby and Gulliver, you sort of like go over to the tavern, and the first thing you notice just as you're passing over shops is that you notice that the whole town is very well equipped, not with fighting gear, but you notice that every single shop has almost like goods set out, a bit like the general store, and you sort of like think about it, and then you think you automatically like put two and two together, and you sort of like think, of course it's like this. They were waiting for Johann's caravan to come, and of course there might be money exchange, but in a town like this it's probably more bartering, and obviously the town was prepared for Johann to arrive and to do some bartering. You do go into the tavern, and the tavern is a strange one because it's one of the few places that has no bodies in. It's obvious that they probably fled out of here into the general sort of like square of the town, right near to the battle. There are broken doors and windows, but there's just like one or two bodies in here, mainly women or children, are dead on the floor. Hazra, can you just roll a tracking roll for me, please?
Certainly can.
So you're sort of like going round, and you just sort of like.
Did I use look on that? Sorry.
Yes, you can do by all means.
I will use look on that.
Yeah, so that'll be a 19. Yeah, so you sort of like notice walking around. It appears that the majority of the attack, you notice that these big footprints that almost like look like they're hooved. Massive ones actually come from behind the chapel and into the town via this direction. You also notice that they're smaller clothed feet or trotters or something like that, and there's also seems to be a multitude of quite heavy leather boots, probably something like the bandits wear or something like that. It's not sort of like nice footwear. It's obviously well made but very tough, and it's at that point when Hengist is at the caravan and Bartleby and Gulliver, you're over looking in the tavern, so you're in the square, not inside. And Hazra, you are down here. That you notice, and the rest of you hear it erupting. Something erupts from the forest, almost like directly in front of you, Hazra. You're sort of like knelt down, sort of like checking the tracks, and also you sort of like hear the undergrowth rustling, and you look up as something comes bursting out of the forest. And we will take our break there, and then we can go on. So make sure you go and get a drink, stretch your leg. We'll have a quick 10 minutes break, and then we will be back to see what has actually erupted from the forest. Don't go away, guys. See you soon. Okay, we are live then. There we go. Yeah, so finished in a bit of a cliffhanger there. Just to recap, Hengist, you are at the caravan, which is slightly away from the edge of the village or town. Hazra, you are just inspecting the tracks near sort of like here. And Bartleby and Gulliver, you're together over by what appears to be a tavern of some description. And this is when you suddenly hear something, Hazra, burst out of the forest. And you quickly, as anything, sort of like look up. So let's have some... now that you're quite nicely spread out for me, why don't we have some initiatives?
Let's spread out like
Do you want us to hit our tokens?
No, I'm just adding you because your tokens are not on.
Ooh.
Oh, I think that's the highest one he's ever got.
Wow.
Oh, initiative, and then
I'll bring in the last roll here. My strong
Gulliver.
11.
Right, so what, Hazra, you've got a 16, yeah? And Hengist, you've got an 18, nice one.
It's just because he's missing half his armour.
Yeah, Bartleby, you've got an 11. And Gulliver, you've got a 21. Cool. Let me just reorder you to that. Yeah. Okay then. So, Hazra, you sort of like look up. You know, one hand was on the soil, the other hand was probably on your trusty spear. And as you look up, something bursts from the forest. You quickly notice that it's some kind of young adult. It's male. It seems to have blonde, quite long hair, not long as in down their back, but quite, almost to the shoulders. However, it's very matted and twisted, and it looks like he's been literally dragged through a hedge backwards. He seems to have nothing on his feet at all that seem to be swollen and bloody. He has some breeches on, and you also notice that on his torso there's numerous almost like small wounds and cuts and bruises, and he sort of like rushes into the through the forest. He's obviously heading towards the town, and you notice that he sort of like as he comes out, he's sort of like looking behind him, and then he sort of like bursts out and then sees you, Hazra, there, and he freezes. What do you wish to do?
Right. I want to beckon to the boy. Come to me. Come to me. But I also want to be watching.
You want to live.
Come with me if you want to live. But as he's coming towards me, knowing what we've seen before with the undead, I want to make sure that he still has a pulse, in a sense.
Okay, so let's do one thing at a time. So roll your influence for me.
Because this is my best skill ever.
Yeah, so he's sort of like he sort of like you sort of like say.
I was 5 away, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, I could.
And naked.
Yeah.
You want to be in my gang?
Yeah, and you sort of like say to him, come to me, and he sort of like freezes in his tracks, and he sort of like looks behind and looks at you, and then looks behind, and it's almost as if he's caught between two evils. He's not moving anywhere. You can see now that he's a little bit closer that his face and his body and his arms are sort of like covered in sweat, and you can hear him breathing quite heavily, which answers your other question, as if he's sort of like been running for a huge distance. Bartleby and Gulliver, you can now act, and you hear Hazra say, come to me, and you turn round to see whether or not he's talking to you guys, and that's the scene that you see. Gulliver and Bartleby, what would you like to do?
Gulliver wants to, seeing that somebody's come out of the forest, he wants to start heading in that direction, but he doesn't just want to run straight across there, if you see what I mean. He wants to start.
Do you want to walk?
No, I want to sort of I want to start moving down. I want to start moving towards the church, but keeping to the buildings where we're on at the moment, because I take it we're somewhere on this side of town.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
So we're seeing them, sort of like at a diagonal. So I want to start sort of like heading in. I'm going to put it on. I want to start heading in sort of like that direction, going down the side of the buildings.
Okay, is it your...
What I don't want to just startle this guy by all of a sudden he sees a whole lot of people just running.
So is your aim not to be seen by this guy? Or is your aim just to move down there and you don't mind if he sees you?
I don't mind being seen, but what I don't want him to think is that all of a sudden there's one other person, sort of like almost like running across as if to get, if you see what I mean.
Okay, and Bartleby, what would you like to do?
Bartleby doesn't consider that somebody might be panicked by him scampering, so he's just going to scamper his way down there, hoping to help whatever problem there is.
Yeah. Do you wish to do or say anything as you approach the situation?
As I approach, or once I'm in eyesight of Hazra, what's going on?
Okay, so Gulliver, you sort of like make your way down the side of the thing and sort of like get to that side of the church. Not a problem. You figure the young lad doesn't almost like acknowledge you that you're there, but you're not too sure whether or not he knows or not. He seems to be almost like in a fight or flight situation, and Bartleby, you sort of like head towards over, and probably when you get to about the steps of the church, you can shout out to Hazra, what's going on. Hengist, you see, you hear two lots of things now. So you hear Hazra's thing and Bartleby's thing. You notice that Bartleby's by the corner of the church, Gulliver's down one side of the church, but what's happening with Hazra and the boy would be out of your eyesight. You did hear Hazra said, come to me, like that. What would you like to do?
So Hengist is going to sort of like snap quickly to action. He's going to call to Johan and says, make ready, I think an attack's coming, and then he's going to then say, I'm going to go check on the others in the town, and he's going to start running towards the town.
Yeah. So so you can see Bartleby and Gulliver there. So Hazra, we're back down to you.
Okay. See, this boy is a little bit uncertain. As I'm down kneeling, I will put my spear on the ground and beckon with both hands and say, boy, come, safety is here. We are here to help, not to hinder.
Okay, yeah, roll your influence.
Please.
Do you wish to re-roll it?
No, sadly.
Yeah,
come here, stranger.
Just to let you know, the skill level was easy for that because of what you were doing and saying, because you put your spear down, etc. So it went from standard to easy, but you still would have failed with that unless you want to re-roll it with luck. So he's just sort of like stands. Well, he's not standing still. He sort of like sees Bartleby coming over, and you don't think he's seen you, Gulliver, and he seems to be almost like thinking, I don't know what to do, but he's definitely taken a step, a couple of small steps away from Hazra and Bartleby as you come into view, and he still seems to be in a state of panic, and he doesn't know whether or not to go back into the forest or try to circumvent round you or approach you, but he sees that your spear comes down, and he sort of like takes a couple of steps backwards. What does anybody... you arrive at the village, Hengist, so you assume that you're about at the well, so to speak. Okay. So anybody can tell me what they want to do next.
I'd like to pray and point my hands at the boy, okay. Opening it with a very... calling upon my goddess... cast this. He does have a willpower if he wants to resist. Okay. But I'm trying to phrase it in a way that it's obvious that I'm trying to call upon the goddess of light to relieve him of his pain and stop the spell.
Cool.
While he's doing that, I want to just also say, we're here with Johan the merchant. We've just arrived.
Okay, so your spell goes off, and you start to calm him with almost like sacred words from your from Amriel. And I always imagine this is almost like, it's that part in the movie when all of a sudden, have you ever seen Dune when she uses the voice? And it's almost like that, but a lot more harmonious. And it's almost like as if, Bartleby, you start to talk, and it almost like transforms into almost like a caring father or a caring mother, and you sort of like, do not worry, you are okay, and the person sort of like hears this. Roll your influence, Hazra.
This time.
Yes, and now with everything in place, including the calming spell, it's gone down to very easy, so you actually succeed. And he sort of like, as you hear Bartleby, he just seems to be saying normal words to you, Hazra. He's sort of like saying, don't be afraid, but to the boy it's almost like the smile, the facial gestures, and he actually sees these calming tone intonations and tones, and almost like Bartleby sort of like holding out his hand as if to sort of like calm him down, and he sort of like starts to take steps towards you both, and he sort of like seems to go past you, Hazra, and almost like straight to Bartleby, and you sort of like, as your spell sort of like almost like comes to an end, he sort of like is really close, and you suddenly see that he almost like is as if all the fatigue and the adrenaline all sort of like comes to a head, and then he stops. Could you make me an athletics roll, please, Bartleby?
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah, and he sort of like as he comes towards you, everything comes up, and he just sort of like leans forward slightly and falls to the ground, and you manage to grab You're not the quickest person with reflexes, and he sort of like falls to the ground, but you manage to grab with both hands, almost like a wrist. So he does land on the floor, but you've still got a wrist, and so he's sort of like that, and you can then lower him down onto the floor. He seems to have passed out. He seems to be unconscious. Gulliver and Hengist, what would you like to do?
Gulliver's still by the church, but he does want to. He wants to pop his hand in his tunic, and he wants to come out with one of his throwing stones, and he wants to move across the front and keep an eye on the forest where the.
Okay. Make a perception roll for me. Yeah, cool. Hengist, what would you like to do?
So Hengist is going to carry on running to the corner of the church. Well, he's going to run to stand next to Gulliver with sword drawn. He's going to be mirroring, so he's kind of like acting like a rear guard type thing. So he's placed himself between the forest, whatever's coming through, if anything is, and the rest of the group. And he's going to say and he's going to go to everyone, back to the caravans, quick. That's a defensible position, and there's numbers there.
You can all act as you see fit. Now, just tell me what you do.
I'll pick up my spear and I will go to Bartleby and make sure the boy is fine and give him a hand to carry him.
And it's the idea of you're heading back to the caravan,
but while watching behind myself.
Yeah, and you sort of like pass Gulliver and Hengist, who seem to be watching you retreat, and you sort of like bring the young lad, the teenager, young adult, probably about 21, 22, you think, and he doesn't look like he's worked out or anything like that. And as you bring him to the caravan, you suddenly hear a scream from the caravan, and almost like a sob, and you recognise that it's Darla, who sees the boy, the young adult, and sort of like shouts out the name Davian and comes and running to assist, and sort of like cries and says, "My love, my Davian, what has happened to you?" And some of the caravanners sort of like bring you out to the into the circle and help you in, and you sit round the fire. Is there anything anybody would like to do?
Azra wants to ask Darla, says, Darla, be still, lady, because there are things around in the forest, and if you make too much noise we cannot hear if anything is coming. You need to be still. I know your emotions are high at the moment.
Slap her.
Yes, let's form a line.
Unarmed combat.
just he's been under tremendous stress. You must just give him space for the moment.
She sort of like grabs Davian and sort of like hugs her, and because he's unconscious, his head is sort of like back like this, as she's sort of like hugging him. He's almost like a zombie, and they sort of like put him down.
Sort of like kneel down by the side of him. He's gonna sort of almost like put his hand on the side of his head as if he's trying to keep it upright, but as he does that, he's going to cast a spell.
Okay.
And you just hear him say, "Leia," as he casts that.
Okay. Yeah.
Sort of like any if he's any sort of like scratches or I don't know any minor.
Yeah. Okay, then roll your
minor bits
invocation spell.
Bits and bobs. It's folk magic.
Magic, yeah. Okay, folk magic spell. Yeah, and you notice that the wounds over his body sort of like heal up, and sort of like all of a sudden there's no sort of marks on his body at all, and people sort of like are quite amazed by this, and
I wanted to try to do it as as sort of like
subtly.
Subtly.
Yeah, you casting the spell wasn't a problem, but he had numerous cuts and bruises over his body, and they just sort of like seal up, because I think heal cures all minor wounds, does it not? Yeah. A cast on a location suffering a minor wound, it restores all lost hit points instantly. So you probably hit his chest because that's where the majority of them were, and so it's not actually you're casting the spell that people hear or anything like that, because it's just one word. It's actually the fact that all these cuts and bruises across his chest almost like seal up and almost like become almost like perfect skin, and it's that they actually see and recognise.
You have the urge to shout, "Demon, kill him!"
Yeah, well, you hear a mutter, and Gulliver, just make a perception check. Yeah, they seem to be muttering. And they don't seem to be out to sort of like get you or anything. They seem to be muttering almost like their positivity, and they're sort of like saying, oh, you know what? They're almost like saying, almost like what's going on here, and they sort of like almost like nod. And in sort of like in agreement, and you hear some people saying something that you're like a theist or a healer from the god Crodus, and you hear that, and sort of like they see the body heal up, and they sort of like say, oh, he's a servant of Crodus. He has the power to heal. We didn't know that. Oh, we are good to have him around. They possess great powers when combat ensues. So yeah.
Gulliver has no idea who Cronus is.
No, you don't. No. You have no idea at all. Yeah, so there seems to be a whole load of muttering, and Darla sort of like, when she sees this healing happening, almost like takes a positive sort of like a positive approach to stop crying and weeping, and she sort of like gently brushes the Davian's hair from his face, and sort of like reaches and gets a wet cloth and starts.
Gulliver's not going to take any notice of what people are saying, but he's good to go and get like a water skin from from one of the caravans, and see whether or not he can get Davian to take in some water. He wants to try to get him conscious as quick as possible, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, and so you sort of like start tending to him. Do you can you roll your first aid or medicine skill for me, please?
I don't have first aid or medicine. I just want to give you water.
All right, okay then. So first aid's a standard skill.
All right.
It's intelligence plus dex. Yes, do you wish to look it at all? You can. Yeah. Okay, so that'll go down to 7. No, that still won't be a critical, but you sort of like start administering almost like something that first aid. So sort of like try to get him to drink some water and sort of like check over the rest of his wounds, etc. He does have wounds on his arms, and he does have a cut on the head, because I think he'll just cures one location. Yeah, cast on a location suffering a minor, it restores all lost hit points instantly. So obviously he's still got wounds on other hit locations, but they seem to be almost like not serious, but almost like done on purpose. There might be a cut on his stomach, but it's not done deep enough to actually cause horrendous bleeding.
Does it look like he's maybe just run through the forest, or does it look like he's been in combat?
Neither.
Right.
It doesn't. It certainly does not look like it's not like the sort of wounds that you would get from running through a forest and getting flicked by a twig. They look a lot more serious than that, but at the same time, there is no serious or major wounds on him.
Right.
You notice then that you sort of like round the fire now, and Darla's sort of like tending to him and sort of like trying to keep him comfortable and sort of like covering her up with a blanket. And it's at this point, as night starts to fall, and the fire is letting off those crackling almost like pops, as a new piece of twig comes to light, or some sap sizzles out of a piece of wood. And you're all sat there, and all of a sudden you hear almost like a piercing scream from the village, and you sort of like look over. You all sort of like quickly look over, and you notice that it's just completely almost like dark there. There's no moon out or anything. It seems very quiet, and your eyes start to do tricks with you as you swear that you can see every now and again some movement in the darkness, and every now and again there's this scream, and Johan turns to you, and he sort of like looks. He hears the scream and he looks up, and he looks to the village, and he almost like looks at you in sort of like, because he could almost like tell that all four of you are sort of like battle ready, and he just sort of like looks quite calmly at you and just says, "The haunts have risen." And you suddenly all remember that when people die in a very nasty or painful or awful way, then their spirits can actually stay in that location, almost like reliving what's actually happening. And you suddenly realize that what you can see and hear are almost like the spirits of the dead being forced to reenact the massacre or their deaths over and over again, because they died in such traumatic situations that they can't actually leave this place and go off to the afterworld or wherever they believe they go.
Gulliver's just going to sort of like look to Bartleby, and he's going to say, "Should we be worried, Bartleby?"
I am going to check my memory of haunts, because I tend to stay away from the stories of spirits. They scare me too much. Would I be able to roll lore monsters to see if I know anything about this?
You can roll one of your skills. You can decide. It's probably not actually monsters, but you can roll that one. I'll see how much you know.
Okay.
Yeah, you remember that it was a haunt that attacked you when you were heading up to Eubin Falls. Can you remember when the
yeah
when,
and I'll recount that tale to them.
When they, because that was a painful death as well.
And I want to note the similarities, or emphasize them especially, between my experience and what Bartleby thinks happened to Hengist.
Yeah, and sort of like explain it to them, and you know that Hazra, you have animists in your tribe who sort of like deal with spirits, so you know how powerful or how knowledgeable it can be. And Johan sort of like comes into the conversation, and he doesn't actually ever look up to meet your gaze. He keeps his head down and chewing on some dried meat or something, and he's just sort of like, we left them just lying there. We didn't help them or bury them or bless them, and now they return to haunt the village to find a way out, being forced to relive their massacre day after night after day after night. And he doesn't even look up. His head's just down as he chews this piece of meat, and he's sort of like, Sinra, help us here. And it's almost like you don't think it's a prayer. You think it's almost like he's run out of options, and this is the only thing he can sort of like call on now. And as darkness falls, you set up guards and patrols, etc. But none of you sleep perfectly throughout the night. You only get about 1, maybe 2 hours solid sleep before you are suddenly woken up by a scream or a yell or a cry or a plea in the night, and you sort of like know that it's coming from the village, and you almost like turn over in your bedrolls to keep your back to it and look the other way, as if you don't want to almost like blot out what's actually happening there. And you do manage to regain magic points, but it's not a very restful sleep at all. And all of you are quite grateful when the sun rises on the next day, which is very dull, and there's a bit of a fog in the air as you rise, and everything's wet from like the dew and everything like that, and you just sort of like wake up, and you almost like go about your business trying to not look at the village, because you know that what it looks like and what you're going to find there. And as you're sort of like dealing with your morning chores, etc., you hear almost like the squawk of crows, and as you look round, you see them gathering on edges of buildings, sort of like twitching their heads round and sort of like looking at the fallen. And Johan sort of like calls you together and to try to talk about the next what to do next. And you notice that Davian's there as well. He's sort of like, he seems to have new breeches on and quite a loose shirt that looks actually really well made. And you figured that Dala's probably nicked it from one of the wagons that was going to be sold and sort of like given in. And everybody makes almost like a circle, and Johan starts off the conversation and says, so what do we do now?
Friend Johan, I think we should bury the dead people here, put them to rest, and maybe Bartleby here, who is a very strong positive priest, who can give them their last farewell, and then we can put these people to rest. And then
there's various muttering of agreement with that Hazra about burying and putting them to rest, and people sort of going, yeah, I think that's the best thing to do.
You wait till they find out that he's one of the old gods' worshippers.
And that I'm not licensed to do that particular prayer.
Yeah.
Excuse me, can you show me your license?
Yeah, can I see your license before you bless this soul?
Gulliver's going
I'm
to say,
sorry.
but before we start on today's things that we have to do, maybe we should hear from Davian.
Yeah, and he's been looking down like this, and when he sort of like hears,
I was going to say, I know it's probably hard, Davian, but we need to know what happened.
and he's sort of like almost, you see his shoulders almost start to shiver and shake, and Darla sort of like pulls him closer, almost like a mother to him, rather than a partner or anything like that, and she sort of like echoes your words, Gulliver, and says, "You need to tell us, Davian. You need to tell us what happened here." And Gulliver, you wait a while, and then you're just about to sort of like say, "Come on, Davian, tell me." When you suddenly realise that he's talking in an incredibly hoarse whisper, and all of you strain to hear. And I won't use a whispery voice. I'll just use a normal voice. But I want you to realise that he's not sort of like sat there. No, the reason I wasn't doing that because people have said in the past that they can't hear me when I do that. So, but I just wanted you to get how he's actually talking. And that he's actually talking in this sort of like hoarse whisper, and he almost like starts to recount what happened, and he doesn't do it bit by bit. I'll sort of like role play out what he actually says to you, and he sort of like says, "We were all doing what we do. We were walking around and preparing. We were singing and laughing and smiling. But we did not know what was about to happen. We did not see it or hear it. It suddenly was there, picking up people, throwing them, hurling them, stamping them, picking them up with two hands, and he sort of like swallows, pulling them apart. We tried desperately to defend. We ushered people into the general store to protect them, but it just reached out and picked us up one by one and threw us here and there. Some of us ran, shamefully ran, just wanting to survive, because other people were being killed and we might live if we ran. But they were waiting for us in the forest, not to kill us, but to take us to the camp. At that point he pauses for a moment, and he says, he has been using us, using them, not me, taking our blood and then plunging daggers into hearts in order to summon the next beast, to create it. I was lucky. They thought I was dead, but I managed to escape. And now I'm here. And he sort of like lets out an almost like a sigh, as if he's sort of like been keeping it all inside him, but now he can actually go that he said it. And Darla just sort of like pulls him closer and almost like hugs him and comforts him, and it almost like seems atypical, because it's normally the male who's comforting the female, but it's almost like mothering him. And Johan sort of like says, "Sinra protect us."
Gulliver's going to say, all that was done by just one thing?
And he's Davian just sort of like nods.
Davian, my friend, it is not fearful or cowardice to run, because if you hadn't run and escaped, you wouldn't be able to tell us this, so we can revenge what has happened to your village. So don't be worried about what has happened. You be proud you're alive to tell the tale. Can you tell us what this thing looked like that tore into your village? Just any description, any brief, what you saw, what it looked like.
Not any description, no.
He sort of like lifts his head up, and you notice that it's full of emotion. There's tears in his eyes, and he said, "I ran. I left them to die. I only thought about myself.
You could
just myself."
No, you could have done nothing. If you had not run, you would be dead.
And he's just sort of like,
not be able to tell us this information that we need.
He sort of like collapses into a sob, and Darla comforts him. And there's a bit of sniffing, and then he says, "It was huge. It bashed through the doors and the windows with just one hand, grabbing people, squeezing them, hurling them. It just rampaged. They seemed to want to get into the chapel. And as I was dragged off, I saw them trying to take another person out of there. But somebody grunted and said they had to leave, and they just left them, but poured some oil and tried to ignite it. And then I was carried away to the camp."
When you say grunted,
the camp, Davian, how many other people was there in the camp? How many of the villagers? When you escaped?
10. We started as 10. There's not 10 anymore.
And when you say grunted, what do you mean? Do you mean like a pig grunt, or like a human grunt?
He sort of like looks confused, as if to say, almost as there wasn't any pigs there. You know.
Did you see your captors? Were they human?
He says yes. He nods his head.
Did you hear them talking about anything?
He just sort of like shakes his head.
But this creature, what did it actually look like? Did you see the creature?
Darla sort of like looks up and says, "What more do you want?"
Gulliver's going to he's going to stand up, and he's going to start putting on his backpack.
Darla seems to turn round and starts to rummage through a satchel or something, and she takes out what appears to be like a piece of parchment and holds it up to you, Hazard, and says, "Do you want him to draw it?"
That would be really helpful if you could.
And she just sort of like chucks this piece of paper and pen at you, and it just comes Slayer, and it sort of like hits you, and Johan sort of like stands up, and as he stands up, you notice that Uttuk almost like stands up immediately, and Johan sort of like turns to you, Hazra, and says, "The boy's had enough. Why do you carry on wishing him to relive this horror by asking for details on details on details?"
Johan, my friend, we need to know what this thing is so we can fight it or find it or both.
He says, he just looks at you and he says, "Are you mad? You? And he sort of like looks you up and down in your nakedness apart from Lorca. You are going to fight it? And he sort of like points over to the village. Have you seen the number of people who are dead? And you are going to fight it? You are going to search for it? You are going to kill it?"
We hope so. We like to bring goodness to the people around us, and we will try to find this thing and send it on its way, because we cannot let this happen to another.
Johan turns to the he turns to Darla and he says, Get him into a wagon." And he sort of like turns to the caravanners and says, "We are leaving." And they almost like start to get up, and almost like reluctantly start to slowly put things away. And Johan sort of like marches off, and then he turns and shouts again, "In an hour!" And then almost like goes off with and Uttuk sort of like stands there for a while, almost like giving a menacing sort of like look, and then turns round and follows his Johan, his sort of like boss, over to the caravan where they're untethering the horses and starting to hitch them up to the caravans. You four are just sort of like sat there by the fire now. Well, the fire's out, or it's just sort of embers and it still has hot water on it and things like that, but everybody seems to be busying themselves.
Is there an armourer in this village, by any chance?
You know there was a blacksmith.
Well, I want some more like my lovely padded armour.
You can quite easily go searching round the shops, as I think Bartleby and Gulliver mentioned beforehand. It looks like this place was well stocked up. Whether or not you'll find everything to your size, or whatever, there's definitely a chance that you can wade through and take anything that you wish.
That's what I'm hoping for. If I can shoot off from this, if we have an hour before we move out, which I don't really want to move out, but if we have an hour, I want to quickly shoot off and have a look in the clothing / armour shop and see if I can replenish my armour that I'm missing. So any sort of quilted robe armour.
Okay, so Hazra's going off to do that. What's the rest of you doing?
Gulliver's going to approach Johan, and he's going to say, "You're probably right, leaving the place, Johan, but we can't leave the villagers in the forest. We have to go and see whether or not we can help them. They could be someone's loved ones, and yeah. I'm sure they wouldn't want us to leave them. But you're probably right by going from this place. You're not the type of people that could be helpful here."
Yeah, and as you
head to the closest village or town.
Yeah. So as you approach Johan, who seems to be busy, you notice that Uttuk almost like stands, almost like intercepts you, and sort of like holds his hand up like that. I use to sort of like stop
I'll
it,
stop,
and then give him,
and
and then you give the
putting
speech.
emphasis on the villagers could be somebody's loved ones.
Yeah, I noticed. And Johann says, "She is dead. There is nothing more we can do here." And he doesn't even turn round to look at you. And he says it quite realistically, as if he knows. And you sort of like think maybe he's found the body at some point when you were in the houses or some other thing. But he just sort of like turns to you and says, "Do as you wish." And without turning round, he sort of like brings a hand out like that. And he goes like that. And a coin tumbles up, spinning round. And he doesn't catch it or put it on his hand or anything. He just turns and lands on the ground, and he doesn't even pick it up. He just carries on doing what he's doing, and Utek helps him, and they sort of like move away to start putting stuff in the caravan. It seems to be a coin that you've seen Johann use a lot, and he just leaves it lying on the floor.
Yay, we've converted as an atheist.
Gulliver, do you wish to do anything?
Gulliver's just going to sort of like, what does the coin? Did it come up heads or tails?
Do you want to pick it up?
Yes, he does.
Yeah. So
he wants to bend down, and he's going to pick it up.
Yeah. So you bend down, and as you pick it up, you notice it seems to be a silver coin. And it seems to be well worn. It's almost like thinning in certain places, as if somebody's rubbed it repeatedly. And you look on it, and you see the sort of like the head and shoulders of quite a beautiful woman with blonde, almost like wavy curly hair that you can make out. And you see underneath has been engraved the word Sinra on it. And you turn it over to see what's on the opposite side. And you suddenly realise
it's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same on both sides. And you just sort of like flick it into your hand. And you can either dispose of it or keep it. It's up to you.
He'll just put it in his he'll put it in his tunic.
Okay.
Continue getting together the rest of his. Can I help myself to supplies from the caravan, or?
Yeah, well, there seems to be two. You can sort of like you are officially still employed by the caravan at the present moment in time. It's only when you're going to part ways, and if that's clear, then Johann will he's not going to leave you high and dry with either no money or no food. So when it's obvious that if you're going to stay rather than go, then he will he is a merchant, so he knows the rules of trade and commerce, and he will pay you and give you food and rations. In the general area, you can find various bits and pieces that you can take from the from the villagers. What are you looking for, Hazra?
Hazra is looking for replacing his armour.
And what was it, or what is it?
Legs. It's a full robe, but it clashes down as legs, everything.
What's it made out of?
Yes, what's it made?
So padded.
Is that an armour point of 2?
2, yes.
Yeah. You can find this roundabout. They tend not to be made to fit certain individuals. because you can lash it round with additional, like bits of swaddling bands and things like that. So yeah, you can find some things like that. That's not a problem. Does anybody else want to find anything particular around the houses?
I had an objective.
Now
that half the party is left, Bartleby would look at Hengist and say, "Oh, well, we got 1 hour to bury all these bodies, so we better get to it."
Hengist is just going to nod and says, "Yes, it needs to be done. Sooner the better."
You figure in order to dig, even if you dig a one grave and put them all into it, it's going to take a very long period of time. You're going to have to dig it quite deep to get them all in, or quite wide. There's shovels and farming equipment here, so that's not a problem, but it's just the sheer number of them.
Funeral pyre.
Gulliver, you know that in the general store there's probably nearly double the amount of people that you've seen in the courtyard.
I didn't actually realistically mean we'd bury all these. I'd probably get to the point of grabbing a shovel from wherever
and then stopping
and trying to dig, and then just being that's 50 minutes.
You start sort of like digging away, and you find a rather stubborn dandelion. You try and
my brawn,
and you notice that your hands are not grasping the tools very well, and you're getting rather hot and sweaty as the sun starts to come up, and you sort of like think, this is probably not going to be realistic. Funeral pyre would probably be fine if you want to try to either put them all into a house and set fire to them. It'll probably take you in the majority of the morning, quite a lot of the afternoon, if you wish to do that. Just before you, is there anything that anybody else would like to get out of the build or scavenge from the buildings?
No, I mean, Gulliver's hoping to take, as part of the stuff that he takes from the caravan, he's hoping to take food and rations, maybe a torch, a tinder box, and a cooking pot.
Yep, that's absolutely fine. That's not a problem at all.
I'll be going for rope, obviously food and rations as well.
And you can find your padded armour in the one of the stores. Yeah, anyone else?
Just apart from the basic sort of things, such as the same sort of like making sure he's got a bedroll, food for travel rations, spare torch and tin box and those sorts of things, and plates, some sort of tin mug or plate or something so that he can eat food off. He's just going to get ready to delve off into the forest, basically.
Okay, and what about Bartleby?
Once Bartleby realizes that we're disembarking, get at least the Chaos Mother tome. I might leave a bunch of the books, but I'll load up my backpack with as much food as I'm going to need, and if I have spare space, I'll fill it in with books.
Okay, you probably can carry.
I'll carry a book through.
Yeah, you can probably carry 2 other books between you. So it would mean that you would have the Chaos Mother one and then 2 other books. Is there any particular books that you would like to take? If you just tell me the general area that you would like it to be based on, then we can find a suitable book for that.
Finding Villagers.
No. Role-playing scenarios.
Yeah.
Gods and spirits are kind of what I'm looking for.
You do have
gods.
You do have. There's a tome that talks about the ancient gods that you saw and mentioned it when you were in the chapel. So you can take that if you wish.
Definitely.
There's one that is titled "The Real Gods of Man." So you can take that one as well, unless there's anything else that you would like to take. So that would be your 2 books. One that's Hazra's carrying, you're carrying that one, and the Legend of the Chaos Mother you have as well.
As they're packing up, can Gulliver try to find out from some of the other people in the caravan where the caravan would be heading next?
Yeah.
where's the closest town and which direction it is and how many days travel it.
Yeah, so if I just sort of like pop you onto the map, you notice that Aylesford, can you see that now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Aylesford is the northernmost one. There's no other towns after that. It just goes in up to the Cartharis Mountains.
So they'll be heading back to Forsen.
Yeah, and then back to Lurien and then Sharshan.
Right.
If there's time left after Hengist's got his pack ready, he wants to head out to that tree that Finiel mentioned and see if there's any handkerchief tied to it or something like that.
Yeah, there's nothing remotely connected to Finiel at all. And Davian doesn't mention or speak of her either. And it's almost like just after lunch when you sort of like got everything together that Johan sort of like looks back at you as he pulls the wagon up, and you notice one of the other wagons has Darian, and Darla is taking Darian to it. Davian, and Davian sort of like turns to all four of you and sort of like says, "Good luck," he says, "and please be braver than me." And he sort of like gets into a wagon and they sort of like set off, and as Johan sort of like drives the wagon past you, he sort of like turns to you and says, "May," and then he pauses for a while and just says, "Good luck." And you figure he was going to say something, but then changed his mind as the realization of life collapses onto him.
I wish I had the coin, so I flicked it to him and said, "Heads I win, tails you lose."
I didn't hear what you said then. You were very quiet.
Was it? Sorry. I was going to say, should have flicked the coin to him and said, "Heads I win, tails you lose."
So you do know from last time that Davian ran out of this part of the forest. So if you're planning on going somewhere, then that's probably the best location to go.
Yeah, Gulliver's just going to sort of like look expectantly at Hazra.
Yeah. Hazra will. Just as a side note, I've hopefully replenished my first aid kits.
Yeah.
My first aid items. So what I will do is we will go to where Davion came out of the forest, and I'll try to look for tracks of where he came from and try to trace his progress through the forest.
Yeah, and just roll your tracking roll for me. Yeah, and you're on form with your tracking, and you even managed to figure out how he's almost like zigzagged at times. It almost like he subconsciously sort of like kept moving one way to another in order to sort of like keep going in a general direction, or to perhaps confuse his captors. And as you sort of like head off into the forest, you notice that you suddenly become aware, Hazra, that there has been more and more people moving through this, and it almost like looks as if they try to hide their tracks near to the village, as if they almost like got pieces of branches and sort of like moved them out, brushed it out the way or something like that. And as you get further and further away from the village, you suddenly notice that the tracks become more prominent.
Right. We'll keep following nice and steady, using my stealth as much as I can to keep quiet as we move forward and look for the tracks.
Okay then. Stealth rolls, please, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so Hazra's super stealthy. Hengist. So
I would
Bartleby.
use a point of luck.
Okay then. So Bartleby, Gulliver, and Hazra, you're all sort of like moving quietly, and Hengist is. Do you wish to look, Hengist? You could roll now. Seems to be stepping on every branch, bumping into trees and causing conkers to fall, and everything like that. And Hengist gives a sorry, you know, as it's
Clank, clank, clank.
yeah. So you carry on through, and you seem to be travelling for a good hour, and you're just about to think, Hazra, how on earth did this person get away? And you sort of like, you're sure you're following the tracks, and you're suddenly getting to the point that, have I missed it? When all of a sudden you hear what appears to be a snort or a grunt that is almost like a cow mooing, but more bull-like. And you've suddenly realised that it's definitely not a lump. It's nothing to do with a lump at all. And then you sort of like hold your fist up and sort of like and everybody stops, and a Hengist sort of like bumps into something and and sort of like crouches down, and you sort of like slowly move forward somewhat, and you approach. I'm going to show you it. Your character's not on here because you can just see this. You're not close enough yet to charge in there or anything, but I want to give you an idea of what it actually looks like. So this is what you can actually see. You're some distance off, but you can see it. There seems to be a huge wooden cell, like a huge wooden cage. It's lashed together with if I tell you the rungs are probably the size of small saplings or even bigger, or small trees, and it's sort of like lashed together, and within it seems to be this huge creature that is very similar to the one that you saw at Count's Lindo's Count Bastion's throne room. And you see this other guy that seems to be he actually does look like that. He's painted, but it doesn't look nice painted like that. It almost like looks painted as in let's put a bit of a dark sheen on it. It seems to be a lot of reds and blacks, and you're not too sure from this distance whether or not it could be blood over his face. He seems to be wearing some kind of robe, and he seems to be walking around with a staff.
Human though.
Yeah, definitely human, but you could just, his face looks awful. It's almost as if a woman's been wearing thick foundation for several days and never taken it off.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, and just kept reapplying it, and it's all cracked. You can't really see from this distance whether or not he's actually really old or just but ugly. You know, you can't sort of make that. The other thing is
with like mud or whatever in his face.
Yeah. And he seems to be stomping around, and he seems to be muttering something to him. And then you can see these three, what appear to be some kind of barbarian type characters. They don't actually have. They have round shields with them, and then what appears to be some kind of sword on their belt. and they're walking around with like spears. And this one down here definitely seems to be on guard there. And this one here seems to be guarding that grey tent. And this one seems to be in conversation with the barbarian ahead of them. Anybody can make an insight roll.
Oh, yes, please.
Oh, your points looked reversed, Mike. No, I'm joking.
Can
I use a point of luck to reroll?
Yes, you can do.
And magic.
Oh! It's a 39 out of 39. Yeah. Okay then. Did you say you used?
I used influence, not insight. Sorry.
Gulliver, did you want to?
No.
Use luck. Okay. And Bartleby.
No luck left.
Right, Bartleby, you sort of like listen, and it's almost as if this guy is telling this other barbarian off. It's almost like saying, almost like shouting at him. And at one point, he literally raises his staff and whacks this barbarian on the side of the head. And even though this barbarian has a shield and a spear, he makes no attempt to even parry the blow. And he just gets whacked on the side of the head and sort of like stumbles to the ground. And this painted man sort of like lifts his staff again. And then he's distracted by the thing in the cage. And the creature starts to rattle. And sort of like grunt and move from it, and the painted man sort of like turns around and he shouts at it and says something. It's almost like "Shut up, you crazy beast," or something like that. And hang on, I just need to see what his skill in this is. Right, let's roll. Yeah, and he sort of like shouts at it and sort of like goes, sort of like, "Shut up, you crazy beast!" And this beast sort of like suddenly flinches and almost like walks backwards and forwards across the cage for a while, and then sort of like comes over and sort of like quite very uncouth like, as if it's sort of like cooped up in this cave, so like tries to sit down and goes like that, and sort of like steam sort of like comes out of its nostrils. And
from our distance where we are, does it look like the cage is sealed? Is it?
Oh yes, it's definitely sealed. You saw him actually rattling it at one point. And then this the painted man walks into this brown cave tent. So he's not on top of it, he's actually gone into it. And this guard comes back over to there like that. And that's when everybody sort of like stops. There's a fire in the middle, and that's it. So what would you like to do?
So how far how far away from them are we? How far away are we from the camp at the moment?
Okay. Is there any particular thing that you want to do, or are you just asking? You're out of sight and you're out of earshot at the moment.
Okay.
Do you need to set distance for?
No. I was just wondering. So I mean, ideally, well, it looked to everybody else, but I mean, Gulliver, if he's not, he's going to make his way so that he's approaching from this area. If you see what I mean. So the first thing that he would come across would be the guard who's on.
Yeah, from where you are at the moment, if you try to get there, that guard will see you.
Yeah, I was going to say, before Gulliver sets off, I will say that there's one guard there watching around at the bottom here, and there's two guards at the top that seem to be guarding that tent, which means if they're guarding it, there may be prisoners inside there, perhaps.
You're about let's say you're about 100 meters away from the camp at the moment.
Yeah. But we can see the guard and the tent rather than the tent the witch doctor has gone into. So it'd be like we need to take this guard here, this bottom one here, from a distance. We need to take him out quick if we're going to do this.
Ideally, I think we should probably try and hit from two sides, because we need to stop the guards getting to release that big beast, because if that big beast gets out, we're all dead.
Well, cannot Mr. Gulliver here, who is wise in the ways of magical things, can he not bring the guard to us, and then we can kill him when he appears, and then when he goes back, he will be dead? Would he be able to do that? I don't know how your magic works, Mr. Gulliver. Would you be able to do that?
I can summon somebody to us, but there's a chance that they will feel the spell taking over them and resist it.
Well, we can. It would be easier than us sneaking up on them, because.
Do we need to fight though, Hazra?
Well,
could you sneak round the back and maybe, I don't know, if I gave you my knife, could you get to the tent what they're guarding and maybe slit the back of it and at least have a look to see.
I have my scimitar delivered.
They're just guarding, I don't know, pineapples.
Well, we need to stop that beast, whatever it is in there anyway. So we need to, if that strange painted man controls the beast, we need to kill him, and maybe that will help us. But if he controls the beast, if we stop the controller and the beast is locked in the cage, he won't be able to let it out. So my hope is that we can take out these guards, maybe one at a time, or as best we can, silently, and then we can explore from there.
I think you're wrong. I think.
No, please, Gulliver, tell me what you really think.
What's your power, Gulliver?
My power,
yeah, 50. Yeah, so you would have to alter the range to 5 times your power, wouldn't you? So you'd have to put 2 points of shaping in, because it's touch 1 meter. 1 meter per power would only go to 50 foot, so 5 meters per power times power. So that would be 2 points of shaping for you to actually do it.
Otherwise, I'd be 50 foot away.
Okay, I mean, 2 points of shaping is out of character is nothing. I mean, I have what, 7 or 8 points of shaping that I can use at once. That's no problem. I mean,
you could actually cast the spell on 3 people.
My shaping is 6, so I can put. But Gulliver's going to continue after he says, "I think you're wrong, Hazra," and he's going to say, "Our one and only priority is rescuing the villagers."
I agree, Gulliver, but I can't understand why
without fighting the beast.
Because once they realise the villagers are free, they will chase us. So why not end it here? I mean, the easiest way would be to bring the guards here, kill the guards, kill the painted man, find out what he was doing perhaps, and then hopefully kill the beast as well. And then the villagers will be free to go back to their homes with no worries apart from lots of empty
But in
real
your
estate.
way, Hasrod, we don't even know whether or not the villagers are in the tent.
This is true, but this beast is here.
We
And this
need
is
to know that the villagers are there. Somebody needs to go around the back, make a hole in the tent, and at least see what we're having to deal with.
No, Gulliver, I will say this now. I will put my foot down and say, we must take out the guards now. We even if the villagers aren't here, we need to neutralize this threat.
Why not prepare for both? If you go up to and check, you can raise your hand and do a hand sign to us to illustrate whether there are prisoners that need rescuing or whether there are not. If there are prisoners, then we can go forth with a plan to put in action while you're still over there.
My worry, Mr. Bartleby, is if we go to see the prisoners and for any reason we are spotted, then we have no surprise. At the moment, we have the element of surprise where we can take out the guards and then we can look for the prisoners.
True.
Hengist, my friend, you are a guard, you are a tactician. What do you think?
You can roll your skill, Hengist.
Thank you.
Nice.
Both plans have equal weighting.
Oh, you...
Both of them are totally sensible in their own way. It's up to you.
Put an extra bit into it. He's going to say, I'm concerned about Davian's last words about him being a coward.
You notice that the painted man has come out of the tent.
Maybe he was set free and told to come back.
Seems to shout something at the two barbarians near the grey tent, and one of them goes in and drags out what appears to be a woman. She doesn't look old. She looks sort of like in her mid-20s. She's bound and gagged, and the barbarian is literally pulling her out by her hair and sort of like throws her down, sort of like just here in front of the painted man. And the you hear the painted man seems to smile at her as she struggles to get up onto his knees, and he sort of like smiles at her, and he seems to be doing this under the woman's cheek. And
what's he got in his hand?
He's just carrying his staff in his left hand, and he's doing this with his right, and he sort of like turns the hand to one side and slowly sort of like puts it down the side of her face and over her chin, and he seems to be whispering something at her. If anybody would like to hear, you would need to make a formidable perception check at this point. If anybody wishes to roll, you can do.
1 point away.
I know, yeah, bless. I was 2 points away.
No, Gulliver's going to start casting a spell.
Yeah.
So are we...
We have proof now that the village is in the tent. Can we not bring the guards to us, or that strange painted man, bring him here and we can kill him?
Yeah, and Gulliver seems to be muttering.
How far away did you say it was?
100 metres at the moment. Sorry, the guard.
Yeah.
The guard is 100 metres away, and then it's another 5 metres between the guard and the painted man. And he sort of like releases the hand off her and sort of like in his robe. Gulliver, do you want to say?
Yeah, I'm just working how I'm just showing you how many it's going to come off in. It's going to come off in two
combat rounds.
Yeah,
rounds rather than turns.
What's the actions?
It's turns, isn't it?
Turns then.
Yeah. So how many turns? How many action points do you need to cast the spell?
I need 2 action points.
Okay then. So you do
the only
it.
thing that I've altered is one of the
range one.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how many points of shaping I put into it; it's still just.
Oh yeah, got you. So this will go off in 5 seconds, won't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay then. So you sort of like start to cast the spell just when the painted man sort of like reaches inside his robe, and then your spell will go off.
Okay. So you do get a resist for it. You can resist it via evade. I don't know. I mean, it's going off on this. I'm going with Hasra's plan. I'm just going off on this guard.
Okay then. So he doesn't know this spell is coming at all, and all of a sudden, there's sort of like the pool of water appears sort of like beneath him, or and as the pool, you sort of like got the water at one side, and he suddenly goes. Into this pool of water. He had no idea it's coming, so he can't sort of like get out the way or anything like that. And you sort of like pull him through the water, and he appears right
next to Hasra and Hengist.
Yeah.
Once I see Gulliver concentrating his pool of water appear in his hand, I know what he's going to be doing. Hopefully, because I've seen it before. So my spear will be ready for anything that appears.
Yeah. So let me I'm just moving you onto this map. So you've got your tokens. So we'll put you all down here for the time being. But please remember that
100 meters.
Yeah, so let me just move that up to there where that purple line is. That is 100 meters. Okay, let's grab some initiatives. Let me clear the combat turn. Right, go for it. Did you click your token, Hasra?
Oh no, I didn't. Sorry,
it's all right. 17. It's all right. I can add you. 17. Okay, let's just reorganize this. So you will get the first pass with it, the first combat turn. You will be able to do by yourselves. Before I can enter initiative because we don't know this is happening. We'll do so Gulliver, you finish the spell and you're holding the spell now, and this barbarian appears in front of Hasra and Hengist. So Hasra, you'll be going first.
Yep, I will thrust my spear at him, in him, as soon as he appears.
Okay, yeah. Roll away.
Sorry, 1 second. I want that one.
That hits him quite nicely. He can't evade or anything because he's suddenly in front of all these people, and he's sort of like he can't act yet. So I need you'll have 1 special, and then I need hit location and damage.
Choose location as special.
Yeah.
And I want to go ahead.
Okay.
And then your damage will be... Oh no, wrong one. Sorry, ignore that. In fact, you take that, but add +1. Oh no, well, just roll it again.
No, it's absolutely fine.
Scimitar.
Just roll it. It's my spear is 1d8 +1.
Yeah, so we can just add 1 to that to make 9. So you are you sort of like ram the spear into him, but you suddenly realise that as it comes down, you've made almost like a grave mistake as it whacks into his shield. That he has protecting 3 areas, one of them quite naturally being his head. Hengist, you're up.
Am I in combat distance with this guy, or...?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that changes my plan then. Hengist is going to draw his sword.
Okay.
Let me sword out again.
No, he didn't. Because we were planning, and Hengist wasn't going to do that anyway. He was going to start running to stop the guy.
Like I have, it's always in my hand.
Bartleby, what do you wish to do?
Would I have realistically been within touching range of one of the fighters, or am I
probably
as pictured here?
Yeah, as shown there, I think.
I'll move up to Hazra then.
Yeah.
Or no, Hazra, Hengist.
Hengist, cool. So that's your movement. Okay, I will bring my characters onto the initiative round now. Just 1 second. I'll do one for everybody. I'll do all the barbarians together. That's 10. So it says savage, but that's the painted man. He comes in at 15, and then the barbarians come in at same roll at 15 as well. Okay, so I'll just pop them onto the thing as we do the next initiative. Oh, savage goes first through the next round, next second turn in. So we're on to combat turn 2. Gulliver, you're up.
Gulliver can't do anything at the moment because he's concentrating on the spell, so he's out of action.
Okay then, Hazra, you're up.
I will stab my spear, and I will be. Where's my combat? There we go. And location will be right leg.
Okay, just 1 second, because he can now he gets yours isn't a crit, isn't it? No, it's just a normal hit. Yeah. And I get 26, which is another standard, so it's higher than you, so I will actually be able to parry that with my spear as well. We've probably both got the same size spears, which means that the damage will be negated between each of us, and therefore it's Hengist. You've got your weapon drawn now.
Hengist wants to try and disengage from that combat.
Yeah. Okay then, so roll your evade.
No.
Yeah, he sort of like the barbarian sort of like sees you moving away and sort of like thinks that you're trying to circumvent him, and sort of like steps slightly back, to bring you back into the fight. And Savage goes next, and you see Gulliver and Bartleby. Hazra and Hengist, you don't actually see this happening, but Bartleby and Gulliver, you see this this painted man just take out what appears to be a curved dagger from inside his robe, and he just goes like that straight across the woman's throat. It's probably about that deep, the cut. And she sort of, as she breathes, a whole load of blood just sort of like spits out, and he sort of like cackles, and as she falls backwards and lands into the fire, and you hear sort of like the gurgling cry as not only she sort of like spitting out blood everywhere, but the fire ignites in her hair and she starts to be burnt from that as well. You notice also that one of these guards here notices that the guard is no longer there and moves over here to investigate what's going on. And Bartleby, it's your turn.
I would like to attempt to put my hands upon the blade of Hengist and pray to my god. Make
cool.
his blade sharper than that of evil.
Cool. Yeah, so that will up it to what does it normally do, Hengist?
Which I don't know, because it depended which sword I managed.
It's just like a normal. It's just like a normal long sword. It's not. It's not a two. It's not a 1.5 at all. It's just like a normal long sword.
Fine. So it normally does 1d10. So that means I do
2d6.
Oh no, sorry, no. It's 1d10 now. I do 1d10.
Yeah, 1d10 now. Cool. And that's the end of combat turn 2. So this is combat turn 3 for anybody who's got any actions left.
Can I spend a luck point to get an action?
Yeah, you can.
At the end of the turn. Sorry.
Yeah, Gulliver.
I'm going to sustain the spell.
You're going to sustain the spell. Hazra.
I will try to stab this guy in his left leg this time.
Okay.
But we'll find out.
That works. The barbarians only have 2 actions, so they can't do anything. So that will be you got
Shoot
one
left leg.
Okay, then cool.
Damage is 9. Oh wow, that's uncanny.
Left leg, did you say?
Yep.
9. Okay, just let me roll. That's definitely done a serious wound, so I just need to roll my my endurance. 59 he gets, which is below his endurance. What was your attack? 32. So he's actually he's got a serious wound in his leg, so he can only I can't attack or start casting spells for the next 1d3 turns. So can you just roll a 3-sided dice for me, please?
I certainly can.
So he can't do anything, but I can still parry and evade for the next 3 things. Bartleby, Gulliver's your Hengist. You'll be next. Yeah.
Angus wants to try and get down towards the second guard as quick as he can because he doesn't want him opening up the cage.
This guard that's here.
Yeah. That one.
Okay. So what's your movement?
So running it's 17, sprinting it's 36.
Are you sprinting then?
I can't remember if there's a negative for sprinting, is there?
Yes, there is. Let's have a look. Unless somebody knows it.
What was you sprinting?
Sprinting is
36.
Sprinting is flat out the movement at top speed, which can only be maintained for peaking spirit is 5 times your movement rate, which gain may be increased according to the bonus that is granted of thing. So you can actually sprint towards him, but even with 36, because it's 100 meters to that line, so you're going to be on your way there. But even sprinting top speed, it's going to take you 3 rounds. 3 turns of sprinting to get there. So you're now 36 meters away from the party. We'll do it like that, and then we know where to go. And Hengist is run off. Okay, then. So Bartleby, what did you want to do? Do you have another?
I was going to cast a spell, but with my quick thinking and spending of that luck point, I'm gonna move to Hazra.
Okay.
And if I can use a free action to state some words, not actually casting any spell, but
is it going to be worse
preamble to What?
No, it's going to Karen.
I was just trying to make it clear to Hazard that I'm probably going to start praying shortly.
Cool.
So I understand, Mr. Battleby. I will accept Amriel's blessing.
Okay. The shaman, the painted man, sort of like is now aware of the of what's happening. You know, there's been combat in the forest, and you hear two things. Hengist, you hear the beast almost like getting more and more angry. You can hear it sort of like howling and sort of like rattling the cage, and you notice that the painted man seems to pull something from his round his neck. You're not too sure what it is, and he throws it down onto the floor, whispering some almost like arcane sort of like that voice, and these strange words seem to emanate from him, and all of a sudden appearing in front of him appears this giant spider, and
I'm out here.
it's just sort of like a like that, and it almost like you see it actually lifts its legs off the ground and sort of like almost like scans with its 8 eyes, sort of looking around, and for a free action the painted man just lets out these and goes like this as he sort of like raises his staff as well. Okay then, so we're going into combat round 2 and turn 1, and it's Gulliver.
Can't do anything.
Sustain as well. Okay then, Hazra, you're next.
I'm going for the right leg, and we will go that one.
Yeah, that hits.
Choose
Hang on.
location, right leg.
Yeah, just let's see. Hang on, before you do anything, because I can parry, can't I? 36. Combat style 58. Yeah, so I beat you in any case, so that's all right. He whacks. You sort of like go in for his leg, but he sees it coming and he knocks it out with the shaft of his. Hengist, you're up.
Hengist is just going to carry on running. There's not much else he can do at this moment.
Okay, so that's you'll be 72 meters. So the next one will take you up to the purple line. That's Hengist. Who's next? Savage goes next. Sorry, the painted man. Sorry, I didn't want to move my spider. The painted man comes over to the cage and uses his dagger again, and he slashes some of the rope, and the door bursts open, and the beast sort of like steps out into the surroundings, and I am now rolling to hit you, Hazra. So if you wish, this is barbarian.
Yep.
I thought you could only parry.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah,
sorry,
sorry.
yes.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you.
Yeah, well called.
Parrying. Okay then. This guy ahead of you moves slightly forward and sees you running towards the him, and he sort of like sets his spear down to brace, because you will actually have run the full round, and so he has the ability to intercept your charge. And Bartleby, it's you can't see what the other barbarian's doing, so I'm just leaving him there, but you don't know what he's doing. Bartleby, you're up.
I'm going to pray upon Hazra's spear to make it destroy, potentially. potentially.
Yeah, so that up it to 1d10 plus 1 now.
Wow.
And that was a move. That was a spell cast. Excellent. And we're on to combat round 2, turn 2. And it's Gulliver.
Still sustaining the spell.
Okay, Hazra.
Sorry. I will use my glowing spear to strike at this chappie again.
Yeah, okay, so he's only got 2 actions, and because he didn't attack last round, he can now parry this one as well. Yeah. He gets a 6, which means it still absorbs, because we've both done it, haven't we? And we both got the same size weapon, so that's all right. So that's but that's Hazra done for that turn. Who's next? Hengist.
So Hengist is going to arrive at that barbarian just behind the purple line if it's enough space, if there's enough distance to do that.
Are you actually charging into combat or not?
He's just sprinting at the moment.
Yeah, but you will have sprinted for a whole turn, so a whole round. Sorry.
Oh well, in that case, yeah, why not?
So you so if you're sort of like, if you're classed as I just need to find the rules. There's a huge list about charging, if I remember. Release 1 combat round, that's all right. A charge, or you might want not to do it. A charge imposes a penalty to the attack roll, increasing it by 1 difficult grading. But I can either parry or evade. So it's whether or not you want to. The first thing you need to do is whether or not you're going to slow down and arrive at him to engage him, or whether or not you're going to charge in an attack. And in which case it will be a harder roll.
Flashing blade.
No, Hengist is going to charge.
Okay, so roll your attack. So that's a hard. That's absolutely fine. This okay. So this guy's going to try to evade it. The defender must make an evade skill using the charging opponent's combat skill. If the defender wins, he throws himself completely clear of this charge. Otherwise, it's hit. Any difference in the level of success results in special. So here's my evaders. He sees you coming flying through the thing. He gets a 55. And his evade is 56. So he charges, he rolls out the way. He's currently prone on the floor because he rolls out the way, and you come into combat. So you're in combat with him, but there's the attack failed. You can see this huge spider now, Hengist. Yeah. There. Savage goes next. Hengist, just make a perception roll for me, please.
One of the few times I actually make that.
Yeah. You hear him give this shouting order to this beast, and he sort of like shouts at him and seems to order something to gives him an order. And the beast turns round and sort of like gazes over the top of the spider to see you, Hengist, and I think that will be a nice place to stop it for this week.
No.
Because it's 11:15, and I know we can pick it up straight from this point next week, which will give you some time to think about. The one thing I will say to you, Hengist, because that was a pretty good roll, as you look across, this barbarian here is no longer there.
Okay.
It's no longer there. So when we come back, next time, we're still at combat turn 2, and we will be on the barbarian's turn. Yep. And that's where we'll pick it up. I can keep everything just where it is, and then you've got some time then to decide on plans of action, etc. What I'll do, guys, just so you know, is that I'll leave it like that. So when you log in, you'll automatically go to this page. So if you want to have a think about anything, then that will be absolutely fantastic. So yeah, so we'll leave it in that position, ready for next week, when we can come back and finish off this epic battle and see what's actually going to happen. So Hazra, you're in battle with a barbarian. Hengist, you're towering over a prone barbarian. Bartleby, you've buffed the party to Kingdom Come, I don't think, and Gulliver, you're sustaining a spell. Still, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to be quicker than this.
It's interesting, Gulliver, because if you cease it now, it'll land back on top of Hengist. Yeah, just
do it.
Maybe I should do that, and then all of us should just go and
as Hengist whooshes around. Okay then, cool. So I hope players, you enjoyed today's session in Mythras, and people who are watching, I hope you enjoyed it too. We will be back as long as everybody's free next Saturday at 7 o'clock BST time. So please come along and see what happens at the end of the adventure. I will be streaming tomorrow at 2 o'clock when I'll be doing some more Elder Scrolls Online. So please do come along and join me then. Does anybody have any announcements that they want to say, etc., etc.?
No,
they do not.
No. Okay then, Mr. Pickles.
I'm having another Traveler kind of campaign thing on Ratharoni's channel, aka Wrath Inspired, if you use actual names. It's just Wrath is the only player, and I'm using all pre-made modules and adapting them to Traveler.
He is Agent X.
Yeah, he's kicking butt and arresting people and shooting off scientists' kneecaps.
Cool.
On Thursdays.
And that's only the good guys that he was engaging with combat in. God help the bad guys, that's all I can say. So what day is that, Mr. Pickles? Sorry?
Thursdays, and it should be 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Okay, that's brilliant. So thank you for coming along and joining us tonight. I just want to say one thing at the end. Please remember to be who you are and say what you think, because the people who mind don't matter and the people who matter don't mind. Have fun, guys, and I'll catch you all later. And until then, happy gaming. See ya. Bye.
Bye. Bye.